Kubek pitching pairing today. Mike Flanagan for Baltimore, just back from a rehab assignment in Rochester. He's 0-5 at the major league level, former Cy Young Award winner, and he'll be opposed by Danny Jackson, Kansas City's young left-hander. A lot of stories today. We'll see the Ripken brothers as a keystone combination for Baltimore. We might see Jim Eisenreich for the Royals, though he's not in the starting lineup. And of course, around Kansas City these days, there's talk of beanball wars and Bo Jackson. Tony Kubek is down on the field with Willie Wilson to talk about those issues.
All right, Bob, thank you very much. Willie, over the last week, there's been a little bit of turmoil around this Royals ball club, along with the team not playing that well recently. You were involved in an imbroglio, a bean brawl, if you will. You charged Ken Schramm after you hit the ball and put it in play. Do you think the suspension which you're appealing is fair? What can be done about stopping this?
Well, I don't know if anything can be done about stopping it. People's tempers are going to flare up every now and then, and you know, they're trying to make an example out of Danny Jackson, Brett Butler, and myself to really stop it by suspending us for 5 days without pay. We have all appealed that, but I don't think you can stop it. I think that if a pitcher throws at someone and they think that he's throwing at him, they're going to go get him.
What are you going to say to Dr. Bobby Brown in your appeal? I mean, how can you justify going out the mound and charging a pitcher?
Well, what I'm going to say is, first I want to let him know that my words would happen. It all stemmed from the night before, not the Tuesday game that the first fight was. I said to the umpire, what are you going to do? He said, don't tell me how to do my job. So I put it upon myself to go out there and protect myself and protect the team.
Let me go on to Act 2 of the Kansas City Royals terminal. I know it'll be hard for you to answer about this form of term. Bo Jackson has decided to play football also with the Los Angeles Raiders. What is your feeling and the Royals' feeling, the players, on this?
Well, there was a lot of bad feelings at first when it first came out up in Toronto. The guys weren't so much mad at Bo. They were kind of mad at the front office for giving Bo a choice where we didn't have a choice. They came down a few days after the All-Star break, explained it to us. It's something that we're going to try and forget. It's something that we're going to try and play baseball through. You know, I guess it's none of our business. It's what Bo Jackson did to himself, and this is what Bo wants to do, so, you know, let him do it.
Well, you don't seem very happy about it. We'll talk more about that during the ballgame. All right, we'll be back to Royal Stadium in Kansas City with the starting lineups after this.
It's real. I know it's real.
There was a time when there was only one kind of beer. Rich, smooth draft beer. It wasn't pasteurized or tampered with. It was just real beer. Miller Genuine Draft is as real as that. It's not heat pasteurized like most other beers. It's cold filtered, so it's as rich and smooth as only real draft beer can be. Miller Genuine Draft.
It's as real as it gets.
I've been shot at, shot up, and shot down, so I don't take chances on anything. I won't touch a filter that isn't from AC. Why mess with air filters that can't go for up to 30,000 miles, or oil filters that can't deliver up to 15,000?
Now, get up to $7 back on AC filters and plugs. See your retailer for details.
If you put your muscle into a job, use your head and do it with AC Delco.
Dreaming the dreams of America.
GMAC makes financing or leasing the new GM car or truck of your dreams easy. Just see your General Motors dealer. We'll help your dream come true.
The dreams of America. GMAC. We're making your dreams come true. The dreams of America. GMAC.
Official sponsor of America's Dreams.
It's all here in this lovely, peaceful corner of New York State. Memories. Memories of the great and legendary, of the bigger-than-life heroes of our younger days. The Hall of Fame, treasury of baseball's greatest memories and thrills. Take your family to the Hall of Fame for memories they'll never forget. Baseball's Hall of Fame. Get up and go.
The preceding message was furnished by Major League Baseball.
The Orioles have won the first 2 games of this series, and they've got a 3-game winning streak going, dating back to the last day before the All-Star game. It's their first 3-game winning streak in 2 months. They're still 19 and a half behind the Yankees in the American League East, and they are floundering around 16 games under 500. Danny Jackson will face this lineup. Alan Wiggins in left field today. Billy Ripken at second base. Cal Ripken at shortstop. As you've undoubtedly read, it's the first time two brothers have ever been managed by their father in Major League history, and they could become the first long-standing brother double play combination in Major League history. There have been a few brief periods where brothers played shortstop and second in the history of the game prior to this, but never on a regular basis. Murray, Knight, Lacey. Ron Washington back from the minor leagues, as is Rayford, who will catch today. Day off for Kennedy, day game after a night game, and Gerhardt in center.
Bo Jackson in left. They call him Boo Jackson. They're booing him around here a lot. Wilson can chase the ball down as well as Jackson. Tardebo in right, having a nice year. A player's gone unnoticed. Kevin Seitzer at third base, outstanding looking hitter and third baseman. Biancalana, Frank White, George Brett at first. Larry Owen catching Danny Jackson today.
And Jackson's first one to Wiggins is slapped down to first base, and Brett is there to make the play. Danny Jackson has a record of 4-10. Back on June 14th, after losing to California 12-0, a defeat that dropped his record to 2-9, he threw everything in his locker away, including some valuable equipment. He threw out shoes and jackets and gloves, and he changed his uniform number from 25 to 15. Since then, he's 2-1. Maybe it's working. A strike to Billy Ripken,
who got his first base hit, a double that almost went out of this ballpark to left center field just the other night here against the Royals.
One and one. Billy Ripken is 6'1" and listed at 178, much smaller than older brother Cal, who's 6'4" and 218. And Billy, unlike Cal, not a home run hitter. In fact, he had only 7 home runs in his entire minor league career and well over 1,000 at-bats.
During the Orioles skid in June, where they just were atrocious, they really had difficulty, Bob, not only with their pitching, but the first and second hitters in the lineup getting on base for Ripken and Murray.
Here's Biancalana to his left, and Buddy throws him out.
They have been getting good defensive play from Angel Salazar at shortstop. He's been playing brilliantly. He hasn't been hitting anything. So today, Billy Gardner, the man who replaced the late Dick Hauser, is playing Biancalana, trying to get a little more pop down lower in his lineup. He's really struggled, this Royals team, scoring runs.
The Royals have lost 3 in a row and 8 out of 9, but the pace is not as swift in the West as it is in the East, and so they trail Minnesota by only 3, with Oakland in between, a game back of the Twins.
Let's see those brother double play combinations. We got to go to who? The O'Briens, Hamners.
You got
brief time.
Yeah, you got Granny Hamner playing shortstop with his brother Garvin, also known as Wes, in 1945 for the Phillies. Wes was gone quickly. Granny Hamner had a long career in the majors. A bouncer to short. Sunday hop for Biancalana, and he throws him out. So Jackson works a perfect top half of the first, and we'll be back right after this.
Listen to the heartbeat.
Chevy's big savings keep on rolling on S10 pickups and Blazers. $1,000 cash back or $500 cash back plus 3.9% financing. Plus additional savings of up to $745 on specially equipped S10 pickups and Blazers. $1,000 cash back or 3.9% financing plus $500 cash back on Chevy S10 pickups and Blazers.
That's today's Chevy truck. It's real. I know it's real. No other reason for the way I feel. Oh yeah. It's as real as it gets.
Well, that's nature, man. It's nature. You get high, you go.
It feels
You're a baby.
so right. No doubt about it. This is what I like.
Working hard? Sure.
Right now.
Tony, how you doing?
As real
How's
as
everything?
it gets.
You deserve a ticket.
The only thing I've got on my
You say boots.
mind says, hold on to the good times.
Rich, you're washing your car. And you guys, you must be supervising.
The best things are the real things. And draft beer is the real beer. Miller Genuine Draft.
When a family moves, State Farm is there.
I'm State Farm agent Bob Scatina. This family, the Nilsons, just moved into town. They said it took them a while to find a new doctor and a new dentist, but finding a new insurance agent was easy. They liked the way their State Farm agent back in Montana handled all their family insurance. So all they had to do was look for this sign. And you could find one almost anywhere.
And like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Mike Flanagan just reactivated after going down to Rochester. He made 3 starts at Rochester, rehabilitating an injured elbow. At the major league level, he's 0-5 this year with an ERA of 6.53. He'll face Wilson, Lonnie Smith, back in the major leagues for just a couple of days. He went to Omaha for a while after they re-signed him. The All-Star, Kevin Seitzer at third, Brett the cleanup man, Danny Tartable in right. White at second, Bo Jackson in left, Bianca Lana and Owen round out the lineup.
That was a pretty expensively paid pitching staff in Rochester before Flanagan was called up. Scotty McGregor still down there. Ken Dixon, who was a starter for this ball club last year, he's still down. Jeff Ballard is still in the starting rotation down there. Flanagan popped a tendon in his elbow throwing a breaking ball, a slider out in California. He will not throw a slider today. It'll be straight change, curve, fastball, and that split-fingered fastball he's now working on.
He's 35 years old, and his career is definitely hanging in the balance. This is the last year of his contract. Fouled off 1-2. He was the Cy Young Award winner in 1979, a pennant year for the Orioles. He went 23-9. He's been a consistent winner throughout his career, but very injury prone of late. On the disabled list 5 times in the last 7 seasons.
When Flanagan came up, he was pretty much a power pitcher. Good fastball, and he just threw a fastball riding almost by Willie Wilson leading off. Then he developed a good curveball and a good straight change he learned from Scotty McGregor. Then some say he fell in love with his off-speed stuff. Then he evolved back into a power pitcher, and then the injuries started hitting him.
Lonnie Smith returns, looking for his first hit of the season. They will use him in a platoon situation at the DH spot with the left-handed swinging Jim Eisenreich. Lonnie looks a little heavier than when we last saw him in '86. A career .291 hitter who had 4 consecutive .300 seasons with the Phillies and Cardinals in the early '80s. Here's the 1-1 pitch. Rolled down to second base, Billy Ripken, who has handled every chance that has come his way so far in his 4-game stint in the major leagues, makes that one cleanly. A look at the Oriole defense.
Alan Wiggins, who has spent a lot of time DHing, spent spring training playing center field at times, and left today. Kenny Garrett with good running speed in center, had a hitting slump though. Lacey in right, he can struggle defensively at times. Ron Washington, a former Royal from the Academy at third, and the Ripken brothers, along with Eddie Murray at first. Terry Kennedy, who has caught an awful lot of games this year, given a rest today with Rayford being called back up.
In fact, Kennedy has been the Iron Man among American League catchers. He started 80 ball games for them this year, so this is a rare day off. Day game following a night game. Ball 1 to Seitzer.
Billy Gardner has really had to shuffle his lineup. They are the lowest run-producing team in the American League, these Royals. Don't hit many home runs. In fact, Bob, they don't steal very many bases anymore. Willie Wilson got more than half their total. Seitzer, an ideal number 2 hitter. He'll take a base on balls, hit the right field. Billy Gardner knows that, but he wants to get another bat to get on base in front of George Brett. That's why he's moved Seitzer to third and Brett to clean up.
This one is hit softly into right field, and it drops for a hit.
He has a good play.
Seitzer wants 2 on Lacey's arm. He is gone. That'll do it in the last half of the first.
That's a good play, though, with 2 outs. If he gets in scoring position, we got Brett leading off, or now that he's out.
Okay, thanks. My insurance rep says go with the GM parts.
Great. You'd be surprised how many imitation parts are around.
Really?
I always assumed GM fenders were replaced with GM fenders. Turns out there are all kinds of imitation parts, and some don't even come close to GM specs for fit, finish, and corrosion protection. So remember, even if an insurance company is paying, it's still your car, and it's still your choice. Insist on genuine General Motors parts.
Look to northwest
who gives you Asia after only 60,000 miles. Europe after only 40,000 miles. And the continental United States after just 20,000 miles. Look whose frequent flyer program serves up the world faster than any other airline.
Look to us, Northwest.
After all the action, after all the effort, when the workout's done, doesn't the cool, crisp taste of lemonade-flavored Gatorade sound great? Nothing cuts through thirst like Gatorade Thirst Quencher. It feeds in fluids and minerals and supplies energy to working muscles. Lemonade-flavored Gatorade.
Gatorade is thirsty for that deep-down body thirst.
Dan waited a long time to see this. He almost missed it. Not long ago, Dan had a heart attack. Since then, his doctor prescribed a regimen including exercise, the right foods, and aspirin. Studies with people who have had a heart attack or unstable angina show aspirin help reduce their risk of a heart attack.
He was always there when I needed him.
Ask your doctor how aspirin can help you. This message brought to you by Bayer, the wonder drug that works wonders.
Another look at the play by Lacey. He'll fire to Ripken, and the throw is right on the money, and Seitzer is gone by a mile.
Bob, this is not a bad play, even with Brett coming up next. Seitzer saying, I'll get in scoring position, realizing that Lee Lacey can at times be erratic in the outfield. He may have thought the ball was going to hit the wet turf after the rains last night and skid into the corner, but Lacey made a nice play. And he had to make a very accurate throw to get him.
I guess we better specify in the future it's not sufficient on a play around second to say he fires to Ripken. To Cal Ripken, Jr.
Here's a man who's been on a tear after a little bit of a slow start, Eddie Murray.
Up to 278, a career 299 hitter, and zeroing in on 300 homers lifetime. He's hit 296 for his career. That's foul down the right field line. Last year, a series of injuries, one to his hand the most serious, kept him down to 17 home runs, but he still hit 305.
I think Eddie's still a little sensitive to some of the criticism from the media, from his owner, Mr. Williams. Last season, when he was playing with injuries, some say he's not happy in an Oriole uniform anymore, even though he's making more than $2 million. Ironically, here's a guy, 9 years, Bob, missed just about 33 or 4 ball games. That's how durable he was. Last year, he missed 25, and people started getting on him for not playing when he was hurt. He was hurt severely and tried to play through it.
1 and 2. He's still only 31 years old, so he should have many, many productive years ahead of him.
I can think of no hitter in the American League when he is healthy that is feared more than Eddie Murray.
The 1-2 pitch. Down and in, 2-2.
Watching Danny Jackson, Gary Blaylock is the pitching coach who has all these great young arms like Saberhagen, Gubaza, and the rest. And he has really been careful not to alter these kids' deliveries too much. Danny Jackson at times, he gets that knee on the ground, gets all out of whack with a long delivery, so he's modified it just a little bit to get him more under control.
This one's whacked into left field, and in for the catch is Bo Jackson.
Well, he made Marv Albert's pregame show with a great tumbling catch he made, as he did this week in baseball. This is a hard comment to make, but the man you're looking at right here has more physical talent than even Eric Davis. I think he runs as fast, if not faster. He hits the ball farther, and he has a stronger throwing arm. Will he become a baseball player? You see him do things like this, and you say, oh, yeah, outstanding. He will. He just needs playing time. But will football allow him to get that much playing time, Bob, with his mind split between seasons?
Even those who think Bo can play football this season successfully don't believe that he can do it forever. They believe he'll have to make a choice. He may decide he likes football better and leave baseball behind, or he may decide after a year or two with the Raiders that his curiosity has been satisfied, that he was able to play in the NFL, and he satisfied himself in that regard, and he'll turn solely to baseball. But no one thinks that for 7-8 years he can play both.
See, Vic Janowicz tried it for a couple of years. Out of Ohio State, I believe, then with the Pirates for a while.
Like Jackson, a Heisman Trophy winner.
Jim Thorpe did it years ago, the great Carlisle Indian. Tom Brown did also for a little bit, running back. And
Tom Brown was a first baseman and
games.
outfielder with the Senators, and then a defensive back for Vince Lombardi with the Packers. He is the most recent player to play both Major League Baseball and play in the NFL. He did it in the 60s, but he didn't do it simultaneously. That's the difference. 1-2 to Ray Knight. And fouled back to the screen. Knight is at 263 after a torrid April. He was around 400 the first few weeks of the season. Wife Nancy Lopez Knight will be inducted into the LPGA Hall of Fame on Monday in New York.
It has not been just the Orioles pitching through that disastrous 5-win, 30-loss streak they just came out of. Hitting slacked off a little bit, too, after May.
Squibb towards second. Frank White with an easy play. So Jackson has set down the first 5 hitters he's faced.
Batting 6, number 27, the right fielder, Lee Lacy.
You know, getting back to not Danny Jackson, Bo Jackson again. If he had been able to sign with the Kansas City Chiefs instead of the Los Angeles Raiders, which is probably one of the most heated rivalries in all of football, he would have been cheered here because the Arrowhead's right behind this ballpark in the Harry S. Truman complex. But because of the Raiders, it's almost as though they look at him as a traitor.
Lacey at 239 takes a strike. That seems to be the feeling here. Of course, they would have been delighted had he signed with the Chiefs, but if he had signed with any other NFL club besides the despised Raiders, there might have been a negative reaction, but not quite as strong. In the air to right, and that'll do it. Tartable with the catch, and Jackson with another perfect inning. We go to the last half of the second, and we'll see Bo Jackson at the plate.
Wait till you see the changes we're making at Howard Johnson.
This is Howard Johnson?
This is Howard Johnson.
This is Howard Johnson?
This is Howard Johnson.
Most bottled beers have to take the heat of pasteurization. And this can change their real taste. But there's one kind of beer that's not heat pasteurized, draft beer. And now there's real draft beer in bottles. Miller Genuine Draft. It's not heat pasteurized. It's cold filtered, so it retains all of its rich, smooth, real taste. Miller Genuine Draft.
It's as real as it gets.
Oh! Just like that, this AC copper core spark plug can fire 30 times. That's the firepower today's high-revving car engines need. What about your plugs? If they can't fire for up to 30,000 miles, oh! Maybe you're missing out on peak performance.
Now, get up to $7 back on AC filters and plugs. See your retailer for details.
Wait for trouble, and you've got it.
If you're fed up with bite-sized screens that leave you hungry for more, Zenith's new digital 27-inch stereo TV serves up a feast for the eyes. Zenith. Quality.
You know, we got to be, well, you'll have time.
Out in the left field stands, jack of all trades, master of none. Sign directed toward Bo Jackson.
Jackson of all trades.
Jackson of all trades, right you are. Trying to take the edge off. As you know, some of his teammates have been critical of him. Last night, they were in a playful mood, tossing a football around. That was Mark Gubazza waiting to receive the flip from Bo Jackson last night in the Royals dugout.
Thursday, they threw about 200 little plastic footballs on the field. Bo out in left field. Inscription on him, just a hobby, huh? I guess that was one of the statements he made.
Flanagan to Brett in the last of the second. Strike call from plate umpire Rick Reed. George doesn't think so. John Hirschbeck at first. Rich Garcia at second. Durwood Merrill calls the plays at third. Brett had to ask out of the All-Star game with a strained right shoulder. That's strike 2. Kevin Seitzer was asked to replace him, and that might have been part of George's thinking.
Well, and also coming off the knee injury that he had, they're trying to make it easier, but I'm not so sure playing first base is easier on the knee than playing third base, because you are much more involved at first than at third more often than not. You're taking a lot more throws. You got to be aware of pickoffs. You pop up in the right field corner sometimes can be troublesome.
Off-speed breaking ball low, 2-2.
Brett? Yeah, no question, Bob, excuse me, that Brett will adjust to that first base role just as Pete Rose did. Two outstanding athletes.
Began this year as a .314 career hitter. Line shot up the middle for a base hit. Big turn at first, but he'll hold there as Gerhardt gets it back in.
George, you got a breaking ball inside part of the plate, one that from Mike Flanagan just sung. Look at his pants legs. I believe George is doing that for a specific purpose, to try and get the umpires aware of where his knees are so we can get the low strike. Remember, Bob Allison did that. Other players have done it. Brett's never really hit Mike Flanagan that well during his career. Is that a trend with the low strike zone these days? Ted Williams used to go to an umpire. One time he went, as I understand it, to an umpire's room before a ball game. He said, "Here are my pants, point to my knees." And the umpire pointed to the middle of his shin bone. He said, "Aha." Something you would try, Robert.
Anything to gain an edge. Ball one high to Tartabull, who's hitting .304 with 14 homers. The mystery about these Royals, who have scored only 10 runs in their last 5 games and lost 8 of 9, their lineup on paper is much better than it was a year ago. Seitzer comes out of the blue. When Brett is healthy, that's an obvious plus. Tartabull is added. Bo Jackson for a full season. There's another hit. Brett will stop at second as Gerhardt fires back into the infield. And yet, despite all of these obvious additions, it hasn't always translated into more people crossing the plate.
Well, they are last in the league in runs scored, and that goes along with being second last in the league in on-base average. They are second in the league in striking out. They don't take many bases on balls, and you get down to the last few hitters in their lineup, and they don't throw many runs on the board. That was Balboni, Eisenreich, Bud Black, Hal McRae, not playing today, kind of a hitting coach, part-time player.
Now they've added Eisenreich and Lonnie Smith since the season began, so their DH platoon is stronger than it was at the beginning of the year. You have to look for this offense to pick up. Consecutive singles in the last of the second, and now here's White taking a strike. Bo Jackson on deck.
And even on the artificial surface, the third baseman, Ron Washington, playing on. There's Bo on deck. He was on a really atrocious pace as far as striking out, Bo Jackson.
1-1.
Surprised Jackson's playing so shallow at third. You're not going to look for a bunt in this situation with the rest of the lineup, the tail end coming up. Frank White's become a pretty good run producer, hitting with more power over the last 4 or 5 years.
Hit 22 homers each of the last 2 seasons. Fouls this one out of play. What's happening at Fenway Park? In the 9th, the A's with a 1-run lead on the Red Sox. Mike Flanagan has gone through the troubles of Job the past several years. Twisted ligaments in his knee, torn Achilles tendon. Most recently, the elbow injury has reduced one of the game's most effective pitchers to a giant question mark. Tried to bust the fastball in on him, but too far inside.
He really hasn't lost his sense of humor through it all. He's come up with a lot of clever lines. They asked if this is going to be an important start and what he did over the All-Star break to prepare for it. He's pitching on his normal 5-day rotation. So I went and shot free throws back in New Hampshire. Through.
It gets by Ron Washington. Brett is being waved home. No throw on him. Wiggins just holds it in left field, and the Royals have the lead. Washington might have made that play, but you can't give him an error. Scored as a hit for White.
Even on the artificial surface, Ron Washington did not move back too deeply. He got a decent hop, waved at the ball, and hit off the heel of his glove or his wrist. Looked like it had double play written all over it. Even though the Orioles don't make a lot of errors, on artificial surface especially, they are not a very mobile team. That may have shown it.
Bo Jackson with 18 home runs and 119 strikeouts. On a pace to fan more than 200 times this year. It projects to 216 Ks, which would be a record.
Jackson has hit well in this ballpark. He has had more than his share of strikeouts here also, but he's hitting over 300 here, and that's a club record. He's done that twice this season, 15 consecutive games.
Flanagan's 1-0 pitch. Out of play into the seats down the right field side. Jackson already this year has broken his bat and hit a grand slam homer to the opposite field. Has hit one into the fountain here beyond the right center field fence. Think about that. That'd be a long poke for a left-handed hitter. No one has ever hit one out there into the upper fountain. And he's a right-handed hitter going the opposite way. 1-1.
He's got a good wind blowing out the left field if he can get under one and pull it.
Got a little piece of that off-speed delivery. Jackson had never tried to hit left-handed, and a couple of weeks ago, just fooling around at batting practice, he turns around to the left side and immediately drills one out over the right field fence. First swing he'd ever taken left-handed.
Which prompted manager Billy Gardner to say to John Sherrills, the general manager, maybe he ought to be in the instructional league instead of playing football, and he ought to start switch hitting.
Fastball high.
He's a quick learner. Eddie Napoleon, one of their coaches for the Royals, had him in the instructional league for a couple of weeks and said, you tell Jackson something one time, and he usually can do it. He's got that kind of aptitude.
Last year he was criticized for being a little lax in his work habits, but this year he's turned that around, and everyone praises the way he's applied himself. But of course it's going to take a lot of image mending here in Kansas City to drive some of those truths home.
Yeah, but you might have noticed when he made that outstanding running catch, shoestring catch, he got a lot more cheers and no boos.
The 2-2. Got him. The 120th time Jackson has struck out. The Major League record is 189 in a single season by Bobby Bonds.
And I would guess that at least a half of the strikeouts have come at him swinging at bad pitches, which this last one was. The breaking ball, watch where it ends up. Too low and a foot and a half, 2 feet inside. He just hasn't seen or played enough to have seen a lot of breaking balls and Major League style pitching.
Biancalana takes a ball. Flanagan had 3 outings at Rochester after the elbow had mended sufficiently to allow him to work. This is his first big league appearance since May 15th. In the dirt. He lost his last 3 decisions of 1986, so he hasn't had a win since last August 23rd. And the 8 straight losses ties an Oriole record for futility. Don Larson dropped 8 straight in 1954, and Eddie Watt, the reliever, lost 8 straight decisions, spread over 66 and 67. Time was called.
Over the last 4 ball games, the starting pitchers have done a good job for Cal Ripken Sr. Said they were nibbling too much. He's got a lot of pitchers have the same style. The Bodikers, the Eric Bells. Bell struck out 9. So they nibble too much, get behind, deep in the count, and then they get hurt badly.
Biancalana pops it up on the 2-0 pitch. Billy Ripken goes out. Lee Lacy in, and Billy Rip for the catch.
You know, Billy Ripken was the... Cal said this. He said that he was our best second baseman defensively in spring training, but we just wanted to get some AAA experience some more under his belt. But Cal Sr. also said the attitude on the bench since my kid came up, and this is what he said I'm most proud of, has changed. He's a cheerleader. He said, we've got a quiet team on the bench. He said, and Billy gets up and cheers, and players looked at him very strangely the first game he was up, and he said, but I kind of liked it. He said, it sounded like me as a kid player. So his attitude is, he hopes, is bringing a little uplift to this ball club.
He, like brother Cal, unlikely to be awed upon making it to the big leagues because he's been around a baseball environment since he was a very small child. Everyone remarked how Cal Ripken, in his Rookie of the Year season of '82, carried himself like a veteran right from the start.
He is a little brash, to say the least, as we found out when we talked to him yesterday. And I mean that in a pleasant way. He's got an awful lot of confidence, Billy Ripken. What's happened to the Royals now has happened to them a lot this year, you know, Bob. They get down to the 7, 8, and 9 hitters, men on base, and they just don't score.
Here's a chopper over the mound, and Billy Ripken will have no play. The bases are loaded. But it's possible that Eddie Murray will have a talk with Billy Ripken at the end of the inning, or perhaps Papa Cal will, because with Larry Owen, a slow-footed catcher from the right side running, he might have had a play at first base.
A near collision between the two Ripkins as Cal gives way, and he looks to third base to see if he could get the runner rounding the bag. That would have been Tardable. He might have had a chance, as you said. He would have had to make a long throw, but he has played shortstop in his minor league career, although mostly second base at Rochester this year.
Willie Wilson, swing and a miss. Best fastball Flanagan has unleashed so far.
Flanagan in trouble. They've had that bullpen going since about the first or second hitter in this inning.
4 singles in this inning. So far, only 1 run home. 0-2.
I don't know if that was a straight change. Flanagan always had a good one after talking to Scotty McGregor. Perhaps learned it from Whitey Ford in the minor leagues with the Yankees. That may have been the forkball.
Scotty McGregor still at Rochester. Ken Dixon there. 3/5 of what was their starting rotation early in the year. Dixon, Flanagan, McGregor have spent time at Rochester. 1-2, part of the Oriole tale of woe. Eric Bell outdueled Mark Gubazar last night. He's pitched well. Dave Schmidt and Mike Boddicker have pitched well. The rest of the staff has been nothing short of atrocious.
Yes, 17 of their 23 losses in June. The Orioles starters gave up 6 or more runs. They didn't give their offense a chance.
Well, he strikes Wilson out on an off-speed pitch. He got him with a fastball in the first, changes speeds to get him here, and the Royals leave the bases loaded. It could have been a lot worse for Flanagan. Back after this from your local station.
Tonight, it's a vendetta. Hunter's been abducted, and Dee Dee gets a flaky new partner.
Great, because I want to fix these nails.
Hunter faces double jeopardy tonight.
Has your car been giving you a warning sign lately? A sign that something's not quite right? A sign of trouble? Then it's time to bring your car to this sign. At Midas, we take care of those warning signs and at competitive prices. So Midas Eyes, get it right the first time.
Before you go on vacation, see your Greater Detroit area Midas dealers for free inspections. WDIV and McDonald's welcomes our new Americans. 7 years ago, Sundas Casto came to America from Iraq with her family. Today, as an American citizen, Sundas enjoys raising her new family in the land of freedom.
I came when I was 13 years old with my parents, and I think everybody comes here for just to be free, and America is a wonderful land to be in.
WDIV and the partners in our World of Difference campaign salute the new Americans.
Excuse me, we can't. You can't.
Don't move, Hammer. I gave it up. No more harsh malt liquor taste. I've come for King Cobra smooth taste and cold malt liquor satisfaction. So I've heard. Now hand it over.
Don't let the smooth taste fool you. It's the new breed. It's quality.
Hey, this is it.
Don't move, Hammer.
King Cobra!
Coming of age, beginning Monday on News 4 at 5.
This telecast is presented by authority of Major League Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of Major League Baseball. Danny Jackson has been moved up a day for this start, and the Royals' thinking goes this way. They anticipate that the hearings for Danny Jackson and Willie Wilson after the brawl in Cleveland will take place on July 30th. The Royals are in New York, where the league offices are, that week to play the Yankees. Now, by pitching him today, it'll be possible for him to work 3 times before July 30th. The third appearance theoretically taking place on July 29th against the Yankees. So he could work 3 times rather than 2 before being suspended. Ron Washington swings on the first one, hits it softly into right field. Tardable gets there and makes a sliding catch.
He was battling a tough sun in those white shirts here in day baseball in Kansas City. Remember, here's a kid that Dick Williams in Seattle had at second base, had him in the outfield. I believe he played some third base, and he now probably is most comfortable right where he's at, out in right field.
In addition, the Royals' thinking on Jackson goes this way. If, in fact, the suspension is upheld, if he works the day before the suspension, he really won't miss a start with an off day mixed in somewhere along the line. So they're trying to maximize his availability. Rayford On the chopper, Seitzer double clutched and doesn't get it.
Oh, it was bang, bang. And perhaps that little bit of weight that Floyd Rayford lost gave him a half a step. George Brett didn't have a whole lot of words, but he talked to John Hirschbeck out of the side of his mouth as the ball rolled out of the glove on the hip, and that meant he lost the play. I think he still had him by just a fraction.
So that becomes the first Oriole hit off Jackson.
You know, Bob, when you talk about the suspensions of a Brett Butler who says he'll lose $21,000 or $22,000 suspended 5 days without pay, should a pitcher they'll lose a similar amount of money per day depending upon the contract, should they be suspended for a longer period of time than a player? They're not hurt as much as you probably, as you said, lose just one start.
Here's the center fielder, Gerhard.
Not a base-stealing team, but Cal Ripken Sr. has been starting a lot of runners to try and get some action to stay out of double plays with this Orioles team.
Fred Lynn played for Cal Ripken last night. He had missed some time with a thigh injury prior to that. Off the fist into shallow right, and it's Tartabull to make his second put out of the inning, with Rayford returning to first. You know that you're not going to get Lynn into 140, 150 games a season anymore. In fact, he's missed about 350 games since his great break-in season of 1975 with the Red Sox. Now, last year, when the Orioles were a better team than they are in '87, in games Lynn was able to start, they were 5 over 500. In games he didn't start, they were 19 and 40. Wiggins hits it sharply. Seitzer has it, goes the short way for the force. That retires Rayford and gets Jackson out of the inning. There's Freddie Lynn, a spectator, at least at the start today. We'll be back after this.
It's real. I know it's real. No other reason for the way I feel. Oh, yeah. It's as real as it gets. It feels good. So right.
The best things are the real things. And draft beer is the real beer. Miller Genuine Draft.
Oh, yeah. It's as real as it gets.
What harm can a little water do? Ordinary paint can't withstand the sneaking, creeping effects of water and time. That's why there's Rust-Oleum. We put our own exclusive ingredients in for one simple reason: to keep moisture out. So if it's going to get wet, get Rust-Oleum.
This is the anatomy of a whole new animal. It has a tough new frame, bigger and heavier than before. Fuel injection for the most standard power, and the heaviest base payload in half-ton pickups. The 88 full-size Chevy pickup. It's a whole new animal.
The heartbeat of America. That's the day Chevy truck.
Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. The best war movie ever made. J. Scott, Toronto Globe and Mail. Great filmmaking. I've seen it twice. Gene Siskel, Chicago Tribune. A bombshell. The flip side of Platoon. Susan Granger, WMCA Radio, New York City. Overpowers Platoon, Deer Hunter, and Apocalypse Now. Bobby Wygant, KXAS-TV, Dallas. Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. Rated R. Now playing at a theater near you.
Brett Saberhagen, something of a media critic, is listening to the broadcast now for the Marcel Marceau interview. Brett, you work on Monday against Cleveland, going for your 16th. Have you given any thought to winning 30 this year? Nah, no chance. 25? Could do it. How are Janine and the kids? Oh, wait a minute. Now we got to look at this. Ball one high. Janine and the kids are fine. Lonnie Smith swings and misses as we move to the last half of the third with the Royals leading 1-0. How's Tony Kubek doing so far today? Very iffy performance.
Dare I ask about Costas?
The 1-1. Fouled off, 1-2.
Lonnie Smith expects to add not only offense to this ball club, some stolen bases, hopefully a higher on-base percentage. There have been problems the 1 and 2 slots, two especially.
He grounded to second his first time up. That's outside, 2-2.
You know, Seitzer's done an awfully good job, and that's why it's a tough decision to move Seitzer from the 2 spot to 3. But when Dick Hauser had the ball club, this team became very successful with Wilson and Lonnie Smith in the 1-2 spot. In fact, as I recall in the World Series, the League Championship Series against Toronto, Lonnie led off and Wilson at second for a great part of that, and also the end of the season. And their offense got in gear. They're hoping that Lonnie can provide that again this year.
In the air to right, Lacey toward the line, and he makes the catch.
Wind pushed that back. That ball perhaps was heading for the seats, but it's kind of swirling, and it's blowing out to left, and occasionally it blows out to right. Right now, it's basically blown out to left field, and that ball was blown back into the ballpark.
One of the most beautiful ballparks in the major leagues. Even the traditionalists who are not fans of the new stadiums have to like this one. Just a gorgeous baseball surrounding and a park created entirely for baseball. Excellent sight lines. They don't share it with a football team. Chiefs play at Arrowhead on the other side of the parking lot. Breaking ball for a strike to Seitzer, who singled to right his first time, then tried to stretch it into a double with 2 out in the first and was gunned down by Lacey. 1-1. Jim Rice hit a solo homer for the Red Sox in the last of the 9th at Fenway to tie the game with the A's at 3, and they've moved to the 10th. Brett on deck. 2-1.
Billy Gardner's aware of the move of putting George Brett in the 4 spot, the pluses and the minuses. The plus, of course, is he'll probably get more RBI chances. The big minus is that he many times will not bat in the first inning where he can get you a run in a hurry. First 3 hitters make out, you lose an at-bat from him, and over the course of 162, how many at-bats could that be? So Billy has had to do something to try and generate more offense, and he feels Seitzer 3 and Brett 4 is what may do it. I like to see Lonnie 3 and Seitzer number 2 because he's so good in that spot.
Seitzer swings at a pitch out of the strike zone and taps it foul. The Giants jump on the Cubs early at Candlestick, 5-0 in the second. Atlee Hammaker is on the mound for the Giants today, trying to continue his comeback. This one is bounced down to third. Washington has it, and he gets him at first. You know, we looked at Saberhagen on the Royals bench. He pitched 3 innings Tuesday, starting the All-Star game, and could work this weekend. If they had to, they could have used him today, certainly tomorrow, but they're going to give him 5 days rest between assignments and pitch him Monday against Cleveland in pursuit of his 16th victory. Tomorrow, it'll be Bud Black at 4-4 against Dave Schmidt, who somehow has managed to go 9-2 for an Oriole team that otherwise is 16 under 500. A strike to Brett.
Off-speed breaking ball, and a little bit out in front. The ball still carries near the warning track.
Shy of the track, Lacey makes the catch that takes care of Brett and the Royals in the last half of the third. They maintain a 1-0 lead, and we bring you a look back at a very special Olympic moment.
An Olympic moment brought to you by the Prudential, offering a full range of insurance and other financial services. The Prudential.
Mexico City, 1968. America's George Foreman has been giving Enos Chapoulas of the Soviet Union a bad beating in the heavyweight final for the Olympic gold medal. Finally, the referee stops the bout. Foreman wins. Says the future heavyweight champion of the world, "I am very proud. Proud I have won. Proud to be an American."
Your expectations.
Most of you will see that game early. Some will see the Angels and Tigers, and then Vin and Joe with the Cubs and the Dodgers from Los Angeles in the second half of the doubleheader. Bob Costas here, along with Tony Kubek. The Royals are 3 games behind Minnesota at this point, and they have lost 8 out of 9. But I have to feel in a division where there are a lot of clubs that have a crack at it. Not just the Twins and Royals, but you have to figure the A's in there, and the Angels have a chance. I got to feel that if the Royals get good performances out of Danny Jackson and Mark Gubicza in the second half, they're the team I like.
Well, they've struggled out of the bullpen. Quiz has struggled. Farr has struggled a little bit. They've got Jerry Don Gleaton, who's been pretty good sometimes, so they've struggled there. The bullpen will have to be shored up. You cannot take a Gene Mott young team for granted. If they get Candelaria back, and that's a big if, they've got McCaskill back now. Witt is pitching very well. If they get Donnie Moore back, and the young players are going to get better and better, so you could have a 4-team race in this division, and Kansas City will be involved. Chicago's playing better under Jim Fregosi. They won 10 of 13 before the All-Star break. But will they have Bannister and Dotson? A lot of teams look like they're after them in the Eastern Division, especially with Trout going over now to the Yankees.
What about Dick Williams and the Mariners at 500 and only 4.5 back?
Yeah, they may have a chance too.
The Royals have a young reliever, a hard-throwing right-hander named John Davis on the farm at Omaha. And it's almost certain that we'll see him in the big leagues before the season is over. He's got the 93, 94 mile-an-hour fastball and throws the hard, high slider. Billy Ripken leading off, top half of the 4th. And a strike on the outside edge, 1-1. The Orioles have only an infield hit by Floyd Rayford off Danny Jackson so far.
You know, they've got a young Cuban-born kid, Israel Sanchez, a left-hander who they're about ready to call up till he hurt himself before the All-Star break.
Billy Ripken's base hit starts it for the Orioles in the 4th.
The Orioles have done all right 5 games over against the Western Division ball club, but they have really been beaten up by the East. I mean, the Orioles are 0-6 against Boston, 2-4 against Detroit, 0-6 against Milwaukee, 1-6 against both New York and Toronto. The only team that they've beaten is Cleveland. They're 5-2 against them. Their record against the East is 9-30, Bob. And they just hit Milwaukee early when they were red hot in the winning streak. And they weren't playing well either. And the pitching's starting to get straightened out, but boy, they're not going to come back this year. They've got to be looking for next season.
Cal Ripken grounded to short in the 1st inning. He's playing in his 856th consecutive games. Taking a strike, and he's closing in on 8,000 consecutive innings played. Not only hasn't he missed a game in 856, he's played every inning during that stretch. The next guy ahead of him on the Ironman list is Stan Musial. Musial played in 895 straight in one stretch. A drive to center. Willie Wilson turns, going way back to the track, and it's off the top of the fence. And he got a little too close to it. Billy Ripken may be able to score. They're waving him home. Cal Ripken stops with a double.
That's the price you pay on occasion, and I don't know if Wilson could have caught that even if had he been back. There's a tendency in baseball these days, even in big ballparks, where the outfielders all the play too deeply, and these little loopers fall in front of them in line drives. Wilson, even with Ripken up, and Ripken has not been on a home run tear at all. He hasn't hit very many over the last month. But Wilson playing shallow, couldn't get back, and even if he had, we'll see by this, I don't know if he could have leaped that high. Had he been playing deeper, he may have had a shot at it. Would have been a tough play, a great play. Good base running by Ripken. Went halfway as soon as he saw that he couldn't make the catch. He kept on coming.
Now here's Murray, who was robbed of a hit on a running catch by Bo Jackson in the 2nd. The game tied at 1, and here's a shot toward the gap in the left center. Here comes Jackson. Dives and can't get it, and it bounces past Wilson as well. So Cal Ripken scores. Murray's on his way for 3, and he's in with a triple.
You know, Bo Jackson got fooled on that ball just a little bit. It was fisted by Murray, and he kind of looped backward, and then he almost outran the baseball. Wilson halfway between also, instead of backing up the play, he got a little bit too close, and the ball bounced over his head. Once he got her in gear, watch how close he comes to this. And that was off a late start, and he traveled a long way. Now the infield had to be forced to come in. Wilson got a little bit too close on the artificial surface.
So Billy Ripken singles. Cal Ripken doubles high off the wall in dead center. Then a triple by Murray. It's 2-1 Orioles. And Knight fouls one out of play. Tony, is it a good idea to pull the infield in this close on artificial turf? Now, Murray is not slow, but he's not a speedster. And if you played back a little further, you'd have a better chance to handle a sharply hit ball. And if it is hit sharply on this surface, you could still hold the runner at third. That one is by the diving Seitzer for a possible extra base hit. Knight wants a double as Murray scores, and he dives in safely.
To belatedly answer your question, Billy Gardner is forced to do it only because his team has been so futile offensively. You can't give up many more runs. I mean, they've only scored 10 runs, the Royals, in the last 6 ball games coming into today. And when you know that, you're forced to change your strategy. Even out of it, you got to move them in because you're not scoring. And you end up having to play differently, and that's what Billy was faced with right there.
I'm not talking about conceding the run, though. I'm talking about couldn't you still get the same benefit of playing the infield in, but on this surface and considering who the runner is at third, play a little more deeply and give you a better chance to cut off a potential hit and still serve the same purpose.
Yeah, I can see you doing that a little bit, but again, you've got to leave some of that. You can only tell your infield as a manager to come in, play halfway, or stay back, and then you've got to leave it how far in and how far back up to the individual infielder, because they all move differently, have to make their own adjustments also off that.
4 straight Oriole hits. And now they count 1-1 to Lacy. Jackson, in particular, has been plagued by poor run support. On average, his teammates have gotten him only 2.7 runs per start. It's the worst run support of any pitcher in the league. That one's low.
Bob Stoddard up now for Dick Hauser, excuse me, for Billy Gardner. Had a chance to have a nice visit with Nancy Hauser, Dick's wife, last night for about an inning, and she was in the ballpark watching the game, and she's doing very nicely.
They check down at first base, and John Hirschbeck says no, he didn't commit himself. Nancy Hauser comes to the ballpark frequently. The Royals provide a box for her and her friends and family. The 3-1 pitch. Full count now to Lacy. And, of course, the patch in honor of Dick Hauser. And they have also created a little display here at Royal Stadium. His old locker is on display in honor of a man who was not only an excellent manager, but one of the most beloved figures in the game. Lacy draws a walk. So, a single by Billy Ripken, a double by Cal Ripken, a triple by Murray, a double by Knight, and a walk to Lacy.
And that'll bring a trip from Gary Blaylock, the pitching coach, and that has been a problem that has plagued Danny Jackson, along with overthrowing. And when he overthrows, sometimes he loses the strike zone. His fastball moves out of the strike zone too much when he overthrows, but he also gets in trouble by allowing a few too many walks. Strikeout to walk ratio not that good. And the Orioles are a team, Bob, who really are a fairly well-disciplined team, like the Yankees, the Tigers. They will let you make mistakes and run you deep in the count. Stoddard continues to throw.
When you talk to Billy Gardner or Gary Blaylock about Danny Jackson, they readily admit that he's pressing a little bit. Here's a guy with terrific stuff, a live arm. When he's got that biting slider going, he'll break bats inning after inning for you. And yet his career record is 32-41. And remember, he's pitching with a team that usually is in contention. This year he's 4-10. And they feel that when things start to go wrong, as Washington shows the bunt and gets it down, it's a good bunt. Brett's play is to first, White covering, and the runners move up to second and third with 1 out. They feel that when things start to go wrong for Danny Jackson, he tends to press a little bit. On top of it, not just this year, but last year. Ironically, he's had the lowest run support of any starter in the league 2 years running, so he realizes that the first sign of trouble could finish him. He might be in too deep a hole right now, is probably what he's thinking. He's given up 3 runs, they're threatening for more, and seldom have his teammates given him that much to work with.
Larry Owen looking into the dugout to Billy Gardner to see if they wanted to intentionally walk, and I'm sure Billy Gardner gave the sign to Owen and say, look, we're going to pitch around him. We're not going to give him anything good. Show you a different situation right there with Ron Washington bunting. Billy Gardner had a chance. First and second, Frank White up, nobody out. But his weak lineup is so weak, he couldn't afford to bunt. Wow, that was close.
Barely foul.
But with a little more pop lower in the lineup, Cal Ripken says, I can get him in scoring position, maybe pad my lead. Rayford and then Gerhardt coming up. Durwood Merrill right on the third base line. Again, another one of those situations. The infield way up tight. In fact, 3 of the infielders are in front of the respective bases. That's how tight they are, all except for the third baseman, Seitzer.
Show you the kind of year it's been for Danny Jackson. In his last start against the Indians, he was ejected after 2 pitches, one behind Brett Butler and one over his head right at the start of the game. So he's ejected. Stoddard comes in. In that game, the Royals scored 12 runs. But Jackson wasn't around to be the beneficiary of that. Game is over at Fenway. Rice's homer in the 9th sent it to extra innings. Red Sox got 2 in the last half of the 10th, so somebody must have hit a homer for them. We'll check it for you. They win it 5-3. Off the fist, little pop on the infield. Bianca Lana wants it, and he's got it.
The center fielder, Gerhardt.
So now Gerhardt becomes the 8th Oriole to bat in this inning. 3 runs already home. Runners at second and third with 2 out. Gerhardt flied to right his first time.
And Larry Owen was out almost halfway to mound to explain to Danny Jackson not just how many outs, but he pointed to first base saying, hey, don't forget, 2 outs, you do have 1 base to play with. First base is open, and we can afford, with Wiggins coming up, not an RBI guy, to be very careful with this guy.
Strike 1 to him. This is the 2nd time this season Jackson has faced Baltimore, and fairly typical of his year. He lost to them back on April 28th when Mike Boddicker threw a 1-hitter for Baltimore. One and one.
Because the bullpen has struggled so much, Billy Gardner reluctant at this point to try and go to the bullpen too early. He will let his young pitchers try and pitch out of holes. They stop by Owen. You know, a lot of people feel that Danny Jackson and he really doesn't have anything that's really good as far as off speed. That he's basically a 1-speed pitcher. Hard breaking balls, hard fastball, which can make it easier if he's a little bit off for the hitter.
In the air to left center field, Bo Jackson and Willie Wilson over.
Look out, guys.
And Jackson clips Wilson a little bit. Not clipping him in the football sense, but there was some contact made, and Willie Wilson makes the catch.
You know, Angel Salazar, the shortstop, because of Bo Jackson left, has really gotten, and he's never been run into by him, but he is afraid to go out for short fly balls in left field, and balls have been dropping because of Bo, and that was a near one.
Well, Bo Jackson barely brushed Willie Wilson, but just the prospect of a collision is enough to take a year or 2 off your life, including for Willie Wilson, who was a fine football prospect coming out of high school, and in fact had signed a letter of intent to play football at the University of Maryland, which caused a lot of big league teams to back off as far as his prospects were concerned. But the Royals brought Wilson here, worked him out. We're looking at Bo Jackson now. And during the workout here at Royal Stadium, Wilson asked to go over to Arrowhead across the street and meet some of the Chiefs. And during a conversation with Willie Lanier, one of the great linebackers of all time, he asked Lanier's opinion. What should it be, baseball or football? And Lanier had a comment that might interest Bo Jackson. He said, if you want to be walking without a cane when you're 35, play baseball. Ball 1 to Tartabull, starting it off in the last half of the 4th. The Orioles got 3 runs on 4 hits and a walk in the top half to take a 3-1 lead for Flanagan, 2-0.
Talk about a father-son combination. Danny, right-handed hitter. Father, left-handed. Danny, more of a slugger. Jose is Pop, left-handed, slapped the ball around, hit it and ran. They are a lot different. This kid is just so strong. They said he wouldn't hit as many home runs coming from Seattle into this big ballpark. It will cut down his power a little bit, but he's a strong guy who hit the ball hard to right or left center field.
3-0 to him. And he walks him on 4 pitches. Tartabull got lost in the shuffle in that great rookie crop of a year ago, in a year that produced Canseco and Joyner and Incaviglia and Corey Snyder. Tartabull hit .270 with 25 homers and 96 RBIs. That's good enough to win the MVP some seasons, let alone Rookie of the Year. Then they made a deal with the Mariners in which the Royals sent 3 players, including Mike Kingery, Steve Shields, and a good young pitcher, Scott Bankhead, to Seattle to get Tartabull.
He has a great pickoff move, and you don't get too much of a lead off Mike Flanagan. He's picked off something like 60 in his career. You know, you're talking about guys getting lost in the shovel. You know, last year you talked about some players. Now we're going to have a little conference on the mound with Floyd Rayford. But also, how about Seitzer? Mark Wiley, the pitching coach, been in the Orioles organization about 8 years. Been in baseball, played a little bit with Toronto, San Diego. Habyan, John Habyan, Habyan in the bullpen for the Orioles. He's started, he's been up and down between Rochester and here. But Seitzer's been overlooked. And how about Devon White, the California Angels, with that running speed? He's hitting well, he's got some power, good throwing arm.
White had an RBI single off Washington's glove at 3rd in the 2nd inning. Fouled away.
Frank trying to take advantage of that gap with Murray holding Tartabull on first base, trying to shoot it through the right side, create a 1st and 3rd. Billy Ripken not cheating a whole lot toward the second base bag. He's not giving a whole lot of ground, which is good. He's got a good instinct for playing this game. Whoops.
Rayford kept it out in front of him. Rayford was at Rochester while Flanagan was on his rehab assignment, and he caught Mike a bit there. Listed at 5'10" and 220. He has occasionally been less than that. He has often been more than that.
Well, he played some third base for the Orioles under Earl Weaver. Began catching to lengthen his career, and he's really a good receiver. Throws pretty well, a good handler. He made a nice block on the ball in the dirt just a while ago. Elrod Hendricks, the bullpen catcher's worked with him as he has with Terry Kennedy.
2-1 pitch. Just foul. A bid for an extra base hit, misses by a couple of feet. Frank White is 36 years old. He's been with the Royals throughout his career. And in 3 or 4 more days, he'll play in the 1892nd game of his career, at which time he will pass Amos Otis and become #1 in games played all time for the Royals. Another foul ball. White played for Billy Gardner in the Royals system, AA ball at Jacksonville.
Frank, born right in the shadows of the old ballpark here in Kansas City, since has been torn down. Member of the Royals Baseball Academy, Mr. Kaufman set up. Mr. K. Ewing Kaufman, the principal owner now. Average Fogelman will take over the ball club, I think, in a few years. But the third baseman, Ron Washington, also a member of that Royals Baseball Academy. I think about 8 made it to the big leagues. There's Ronnie. It was an interesting concept, perhaps before its time. A lot of money was invested by Mr. and Mrs. Kaufman in that.
The 2-2 pitch is hit high and deep to left. Toward the line. Got a chance, but at the fence. The catch is made by Wiggins.
A little bit out in front. You could tell by the sound that he hit a little on the end of the bat as Flanagan took a little bit off that pitch. It starts off the bat like it's got a chance in the corner, which is 330 feet away. And you can see the follow-through of Flanagan, almost like it was a straight change, I believe, off his fastball.
A mixture of boos and cheers greeting Jackson as he steps into the box. He struck out for the 120th time this season, his first time up. Ball 1 high. The Cardinals, who won last night at San Diego 4-3 with a 2-0 lead there in the third and an 8-game lead in the National League East. That Red Sox victory over the A's, 5-3 and 10, comes on a 2-run homer by Dave Henderson in the last of the 10th at Fenway. The 1-1 pitch to Jackson. And he got in the chase, a very bad pitch.
Well, that's what a lot of people were saying. And Bo Jackson will swing a lot of bad pitches. You make a mistake, he can really take you deep. Again, change up of maybe the forkball, even a split-fingered fastball that bounced. But one of the reasons people feel, you talk to scouts, why this team doesn't score many runs, the Royal, that they're too easy to pitch to. Too many blind spots, too over-anxious at the plate. Won't let a pitcher make mistakes. They go up there hacking too much and they get themselves out. And look at that St. Louis score, 2-0 over San Diego. You wonder how Whitey's doing it. I thought Hugh Alexander, one of the great super scouts in baseball, 50 years now with the Cubs, made a good observation when talking about the kind. He said, nobody runs a bullpen like Whitey Herzog. Now he's done it with all those injuries to his pitching staff.
The 1-2. Laid off that one. 2 balls and 2 strikes. Tartabull, who started the inning with a walk, is at first with 1 out. Biancalana's on deck.
Got guys that strike out a lot. It's hard to really start runners. You get strikeouts and throwouts, which puts a burden. He goes down again. It puts an awful burden on a manager.
And listen to it.
Well, these are the kind of guys that will give a Bo Jackson fits. A guy who has good off-speed stuff. And that's what it was again. What did he throw him? 3 off-speed pitches in that series?
Eric Bell, somewhat similar. Last night for Baltimore.
Struck out 9. Bodeker's like that. We have a whole lot of hard throwers on this Orioles staff. There's a lot of similarities among these pitchers.
Ball 1 to Biancalana. Flanagan has fanned 4. Jackson twice. And Willie Wilson twice. You take a look at the Orioles staff. Schmidt is 9-2. Bodeker's 7-4. With a different club, he might have a dozen victories by now. And Eric Bell is 7-7.
If you had to point to one big thing on this Orioles ball club that hurt them, was the loss of Don Ossie, lost for the season, because he's your stopper. Now you've got to take a middle or long reliever, or even a starter in some cases, try and make him your stopper. It disrupts the entire 10-man staff.
The 2-0 pitch is hit into center field, and it's going to drop in front of Gerhardt. A base hit for Biancalana. So 2 on with 2 out. To finish the thought on what has been, in all fairness, a terrible ball club this year in Baltimore. The records of Bell, Bodeker, and Schmidt combined are 23-13. The rest of the staff, 14-40. And when guys who have been mainstays, like Flanagan and McGregor, admittedly in their mid-30s, but you're not counting on them to be completely over the hill as of yet, when those guys can't do anything for you, you know you're in deep trouble. You check down at first base, and they say that Larry Owen didn't go around.
The Orioles have had just a terrible streak on the road. They've got a 2-game winning streak now on the road here in Kansas City, but before coming in here, the 16 prior games on the road, they'd won just 1. And most of that started and ended with their pitching staff.
This one might drop. Yup, it's in there. Biancalana stops at second, but Tartabull comes home, and the Royals are within 1. A walk to Tartabull to start the inning, and then after 2 out, a pair of soft singles by Biancalana and Owen.
It's been a real soft spot in the lineup for Billy Gardner, the 2 catchers, Owen and Jamie Quirk. Owen known as being the better defensively, although he made a mistake yesterday that may have cost them a run. But they have not had much run production out of that catcher spot. Broken bat, but he gets an RBI.
Willie Wilson has struck out twice. Base hit could tie it as he takes a strike. If you can get into the Oriole bullpen, you're usually in pretty good shape. Just to back up what you said earlier, you were talking specifically about the closers rather than the middle or long men. 1-1. But Cal Ripken's bullpen has had 42 save possibilities this year, and they have blown 25 of them.
He's already had 17 pitchers up and down, some because of injury, more often than not because of ineffectiveness. I mean, they've resurrected the career of Doug Corbett. He's called back, released a couple of times.
You notice what happens here with Flanagan. He's able to throw that fastball by people because he's been feeding them a steady diet of off-speed breaking stuff. He's gotten Wilson to swing through several fastballs in his 3 at-bats. Struck him out with a fastball in the first with a change in the second. And this one is lofted to right, and Lacey's going to have it. The Royals will leave 2, score 1, cut it to 3-2 after 4, and we'll be back after these messages from your local station.
The charge is murder, and Della Street is on trial for her life. Perry must save her in the case he can't afford to lose. Perry Mason returns Sunday.
It's real. I know it's real. No other reason for the way I feel. Oh, yeah. It's as real as it gets. It feels good. That's all right.
The best things are the real things. And draft beer is the real beer. Miller Genuine Draft.
Oh, yeah. It's as real as it gets.
Tigers down by 3 in the bottom of the 9th. And a long drive, deep right center field. This ball's got a chance and a home run. And a long drive down the line, and this one's gone. Another home run. Oh, would you believe it? 3 in a row.
Catch the Tiger excitement tonight at 7:30 on Channel 4.
Oh, what a day.
How did we become one of the largest Toyota dealers? By giving the very best deal on the finest automobiles and trucks. Hundreds of new Toyotas and quality used cars. Here's an example, a 1987 Toyota 4x4 extra cab, only $55 down, $345 a month. Or here's an 87 Toyota pickup for only $55 down, $195 a month. So what do? Pick up the phone. Give us a call at 253-2478. Or better yet, come on down and let's make a deal. Trend Toyota, open 9 to 9 Monday through Friday, 9 to 4 Saturday. What a place.
Michigan, celebrating 150 years of statehood.
Danny Jackson, as we've told you, was limited to 2 pitches in his last start as the beanball war was rekindled in Cleveland. And, of course, there's a lot of controversy about pitchers throwing too close this year. The pitchers contend the hitters are leaning out over the plate too much because the inside portion has been taken away from them. Well, over on the other bench, you've got a Frank Robinson, one of the great players of all time, who used to stand almost on the inside corner. We asked him for his list of the pitchers who were best at moving a hitter off the plate, and we'll show it to you in a minute. Ball 1 high to Wiggins. You remember Robbie's elbow almost used to be in the strike zone. He says Gibby, Drysdale, the notoriously tough Stan Williams, and Jim Bunning were the best at keeping you honest.
I asked Frankie yesterday if he had ever charged them on. He said one time. He said the same pitcher in the same game hit me twice in the same spot, both times in the left elbow or just above it. He said my hand was so numb I couldn't hit, I decided to charge him. You know, there's a direct correlation, I believe, Bob, between what the strike zone has become and players charging the mound a lot more. Get into it a little bit more. They've made a lot of hitters low ball hitters, which is different than it was 10, 15, 25 years ago. The majority of hitters back 10 years ago or more were high ball hitters. Now the majority are low ball hitters because, they've had to do that to adapt. Because the strike zone now is sometimes below the knee to the belt. They've had to adjust their swing, and to hit a low ball, you've got to go down and get it. And when you're going down and get it, as Andre Dawson might have been when he got hit by Eric Schau, the ball went under his left arm. When you go down to get a pitch, you're hitting a lot better pitchers' pitches, breaking balls, good low sinkers, and when they come belt high up and in and you're diving for the low pitch, you're going to get hit. I think a simple adjustment, perhaps during the offseason by the Rules Committee to enforce with the umpires, let's get back to more of a legitimate strike zone. Call some fastballs above to straighten the hitters up, and they won't be diving down for the low pitch.
Wiggins opens the 5th with a walk. Billy Ripken, who's 1 for 2. Wiggins stole as many as 70 bases in a season back in '84 for San Diego. had consecutive years of 66 and 70 steals for the Padres. Not quite the threat he once was. Thrown out stealing last night.
And Billy Ripken, although he will gain better bat control as he gets a little more experience and learns major league pitchers, can take pitches, doesn't fear to hit with 2 strikes, can hit the opposite way. That's why he's in the 2 slot to protect Wiggins.
1-0.
Seitzer was so good a good part of this year. Willie Wilson at one time was getting on base a lot. Seitzer hitting second. Willie Wilson has stolen 19 consecutive bases without getting caught. Every good base stealer usually has got an outstanding 2-hitter.
There he goes.
Look
It's
out
hit to
that.
short. Biancalana on the short hop. Had he caught it on the fly, it's an easy double play. Couldn't do that. So Wiggins is at second with 1 out.
This Orioles team coming in had stolen just 39 bases, been caught 27 times, but they still came out of spring training wanting to run more, create gaps in the defense. He's a guy that will straight steal. Wiggins, most of the time it's a hit and run. The time it worked.
Told you earlier that Cal Ripken Jr. is playing in his 856th consecutive game. The closest that streak has come to being snapped was early in the '85 season when Cal turned an ankle in a game at Texas, and he says he heard a loud pop. He was able to tape it up between innings and continue playing in that game. Afterwards, the swelling was so great that Ripken thought the ankle was broken. They took him to the hospital for x-rays. The x-rays were negative, but the ankle was badly sprained apparently, and they thought for sure he'd miss some time. Well, as fate would have it, the next night they had a game scheduled, but it was an exhibition game against the Naval Academy. So Cal sat that one out, and his recuperative powers being what they are, 2 nights later, he was able to play in the next regularly scheduled game, and the streak remains intact.
You know, more than the recuperative powers, which are pretty good for him, was the guts he showed in playing on that ankle for about 2 weeks. He hobbled around a lot because it was severely sprained, but he just gutted his way through it. Kind of temperament that he has.
Narrowly missed his 18th homer when he hit the top of the center field fence in the 4th, and it would have been only his 2nd homer in the last month. He's been in a bit of a power drought. The 1-0 pitch to him, 2-0, but you talk about consistency. Just as Dale Murphy is almost always in the mid-30s, 35, 36, 37 home runs year after year, last year being an exception for Murph. Look at Ripken since he came up in '82. 28, 27, 27 again, 26, and then 25 home runs.
This is not to take one single thing as we look at Wiggins. White trying to sneak behind him. Owen is very free with his arm. He'll try pickoffs at all bases. His strong suit is catching. Not to take anything away from Cal, but he has had the great fortune of having Eddie Murray bat behind him during his career, like Roger Maris did, Mickey Mantle, and so many other great sluggers. There's Eddie Matthews behind a Henry Aaron, or a McCovey behind a Willie Mays, and on and on.
Jackson has walked 2. Here's the 3-0 pitch, and he walks Cal Ripken. Jackson was cruising along until the 4th, having allowed only an infield hit by Rayford. Then the Orioles jumped all over him with 4 consecutive hits, 3 of them for extra bases.
Gary Blaylock with another trip. Buy a little time as Billy Gardner gets the bullpen going.
Your
again.
attention, please. John or Karen Furman.
Bob
defense
Stoddard.
combination.
He's up for the 2nd time of this ball game. Good-looking starting pitcher for Seattle a few years back.
While we have a chance, we'll drop in the reminder that, as always, we select the NBC Miller Lite Player of the Game at the conclusion of the contest. We're in the top half of the 5th right now. The Orioles lead at 3-2. They've won the first 2 games of this series, 5-4 on Thursday night, and then 3-1 last night as Eric Bell pitched extremely well, and Tom Niedenfuhr got his 2nd consecutive save.
You know how delicate a thing it's been for a pitching coach like Blaylock to have all these great young arms? Look what's happening in Texas now. Some people are accusing Bobby Valentine and Tom House, the pitching coach, of altering deliveries, pushing pitchers too fast, and general manager Tom Grieve is the one who brought them up. good baseball mind. I don't buy that. I mean, some of these kids are getting beaten around or were earlier, but Blaylock really hasn't tampered with deliveries except slight modifications, which is a plus for him.
Murray swings and misses. Unlike Cal Ripken, Murray has been in the midst of a homer surge. He's hit one out in 7 of his last 10 games to bring his season's total to 21. What about Mattingly? He's homered in 7 straight, passing the American League record of 6 held by many players prior to last night, including Reggie Jackson. 0-2, and now Mattingly is within 1 game of the all-time record of homers in 8 consecutive games, set by Dale Long when he was playing with the Pirates in the mid-50s.
Mattingly today will face the Rangers' Jose Guzman. It's a night game.
2 on, 1 out, and an 0-2 pitch to Murray. Got him. Good time for Jackson's first strikeout.
Don't know what Gary Blaylock told him, but he really had a lot more movement and seemed to have a lot more velocity in his fastball. Had Eddie Murray go after at least 2 pitches out of the strike zone. The last one was a ball, as was the first one he swung at. Here's a kid that gets the ball up there, low 90s at time. That was one of those that just took off.
Knight grounded out and then doubled off Seitzer's glove at third to drive home a run in the 4th inning. Up the middle, Biancalana can't get it. Wiggins coming home. Throw from center by Willie Wilson, cut off by Brett near the mound. And Wiggins slides across with the 4th run.
Don't know what happened to Buddy Biancalana, but it did not appear that he had a good job. He may have been playing Ray Knight to the 3rd base hole, expecting Jackson maybe to throw the ball down and in where he might have to pull the ball. Buddy looked like he broke in and looped back, and on the artificial surface couldn't catch up. So Ray Knight, who has been struggling with the bat after a hot start, picks up Eddie Murray. It's one of those where you rest Salazar, who perhaps would have gotten that ball because he's been in the flow of the game playing a lot more than Buddy Biancalana, and there's just a little bit of difference in where they're playing on this turf, and the ball sneaks through.
Lacey lined to right and walked. Strike 1 to him. Cal Ripken at second. Ray Knight after the RBI hit. His 2nd run driven home today is at first. Slow roll it to short. Biancalana goes to second, and they get the force out there on the toss to Frank White. But the Orioles pad their lead with another run on the RBI hit by Ray Knight.
Now there's a full-featured camcorder this small that replays through your TV or your VCR. Zenith's compact VHS. It's in a league by itself. Zenith. Quality.
It's the place you come to for everything you're looking for. Ace is the place that lends a helping hand. Ace is the place.
For Ace Best Buys, like an ever-ready 7-way light for $9.44.
Ace is the place.
And Ace Propane Torch Kit for $7.77. And keep tools at hand with a handyman holster and free belt for $6.77.
Ace is the place with the help of hardware man.
Somehow there's got to be a cure for athlete's foot.
Hey, step up to the mic.
Mike.
Mycotin. This cures athlete's foot. It's got something the others don't. Myconazole. There's nothing more powerful.
Yes? You got something that cures athlete's foot?
Sure, step up to the mic.
Huh?
Mycotin. It cures athlete's foot.
Step up to the cure. Step up to the mic. Mycotin. Also new deodorant spray.
What the hell?
Yeah. Get the brakes done?
Uh-huh.
You Miticize them?
I didn't think it mattered.
Didn't matter? Halfway up the Himalayas and it didn't matter?
Miticize your brakes and get it right the first time. Then they're backed by the dependable, unbeatable Midas guarantee.
I should have Miticized.
Ah, but you didn't, did you, buckaroo?
Before you take off on vacation, Take it to Midas for a free trip check.
I had a headache this big.
I had a headache this big.
I had a headache this big. I had a headache this big. But I took Excedrin, and it's gone.
Excedrin from Bristol Myers. Excedrin, the headache medicine.
Buck O'Neill, he played with all of them in the old Negro leagues, with Josh Gibson and with Satchel Paige, with Ray Dandridge, with and against them all. Ray Dandridge, outstanding third baseman, is going into the Hall of Fame along with Catfish Hunter and Billy Williams in a couple of weeks. Buck is now a scout for the Chicago Cubs, in the vicinity of 70 years old, and he's as trim as a man half his age.
Is he interesting to sit and listen to after ball games for hours on end? Played against the greats like Babe Ruth when they barnstormed with Josh and Coop Papa Bell and Sats and the other people you mentioned. Here's a guy you wonder was one of those free agents, about 280 last year, as you said, lifetime 291 that nobody in the American League could use. Battled his way back through the minor leagues. The alleged collusion. Wonder if he or his agent testified, as so many other agents have in those hearings. I guess the decision, the 85 offseason, should be coming up around August. Don't know when the one for last offseason will come up by Mr. Nicolau.
A ball and 2 strikes to him. Lonnie has played on world championship teams in 3 different cities. 80 with the Phillies, 82 with the Cards, and then against the Cards for the Royals in 85. Ripken at shortstop. Takes care of Lonnie Smith. Just to put it in perspective, this year Cal Ripken passed Eddie Yost on the Ironman list.
The third baseman,
he is closing in on Stan Musial. He'll pass him before the year is over, barring an injury of some kind, and he can pass Joe Sewell. He's got a chance at Billy Williams, maybe even Steve Garvey. But if he's going to catch Lou Gehrig at 2,130 consecutive games played, it'll happen sometime midsummer 1995.
Then he's got to worry about Sachio Kinagusa, who passed Lou Gehrig a couple weeks ago over in Japan. You know, some criticize his range at shortstop. No, he is not a blazer, but he is a better than average runner, and he is very adept at positioning, playing his pitching staff. Although the last 2 years, the way the Orioles staff has struggled, I mean, they just can't execute like those great Orioles staffs for about 18 or 20 years. You can't throw it where they want to. It's hard to position in the center of the diamond. You got to coordinate that defense with the pitching staff, and that's hard for Cal Jr. to do these days.
2-1 to Seitzer. He's 1 for 2. Fastball is popped up. Shallow center field. Gerhardt signals and puts it away. A check of the scoreboard. See what the Cards and Padres are up to. The Cards lead at 3-1 in the 5th. And they're also playing at Candlestick, and San Francisco lengthens the lead to 6-0 in the 5th. Hammaker going against Maddox. I would imagine Greg Maddox has been knocked out by now for the Cubs, but we'll check on that for you.
And I guess the Eric Shaw deal, San Diego to the Cubs, was about to be consummated, and then Eric Shaw hit Andre Dawson, and the deal was off in a hurry.
Ball 1 to Brett. Singled sharply to center, fly to right. Flirting with 300. A plateau he's reached 9 times in his career, with, of course, the high of 390 in 1980.
George is concerned that injuries keep hitting him. If he does not reach the 3,000 hit plateau, will he make the Hall of Fame?
He'll make it easy no matter what happens.
Wind may push this, but not far enough, huh?
Wiggins shy of the track. 1-2-3 inning for Flanagan. He maintains a 4-2 lead, and we bring you another edition of Characters of the Game.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Characters of the Game, brought to you by A&W Root Beer. Sit back and pour yourself a frosty one. Following in the footsteps of such celebrated oddballs as Jay Johnstone and Tug McGraw, meet baseball's newest clown prince, Mets relief pitcher Roger McDowell. His gags include teammate impersonations and his soon-to-be famous dugout handstand.
The worst part about that was I had to put my uniform pants on, and you know, I'm kind of tall and thin, and there wasn't a whole lot of room So I had to put my head in with one of my arms, which looked like one of my legs. Next time, I think we're going to get Rusty Staub's old pants so that we have that baggage there and have the extra added area where I can put my head in, and hopefully it'll look a little bit more realistic.
All right, Roger, we'll wait with bated breath for that one. But for now, welcome to the club. You're a most inventive character of the game.
Now that I'm a big TV personality and living in Hollywood, it's important that I improve my ability to party. So I got myself this hot tub and invited over some close friends I've known for hours. And instead of the usual boring soft drinks, I'm serving A&W root beer. A&W is rich and creamy, and it has that frosty mug taste. There's nothing like a hot tub, a cold frosty one, and some properly prepared crustaceans. Pour yourself an A&W, regular or diet.
An American tradition continues when the Yankees meet the White Sox. Then the Cubs face the Dodgers. An old-fashioned doubleheader next Saturday.
Danny Jackson has had his troubles at times this year. 4-10 record, ERA 4.28. And I'm sure you remember, Tony, the game he pitched here in October of '85 against the Blue Jays, Game 5 of the playoffs, the Royals with their backs to the wall, down 3-1. He pitched an outstanding game to send the series back to Toronto and give his team a chance. Ron Washington starts it and takes a ball. Ron Washington credits Billy Gardner, now in the opposing dugout, with teaching him how to play the game in a very real sense. Washington was with Gardner in Minnesota. Here's a ball well hit into left center field. Willie Wilson had him played shallow, won't get to it. Extra bases for Washington, at least a double. Thinking about 3, but he'll stop at second base. Washington says Gardner's the guy who taught him not so much how to play the game physically, but how to adjust mentally to a reserve role, to a utility role, how to be prepared and how to accept that and give his best when he is called upon.
And there's an example of what he may have learned from Billy Gardner. Here's a ball with no outs in the gap. Willie Wilson does not have an outstanding throwing arm. He was playing to right center field. He might have made it to third base, but he remembered one of those cardinal rules of baseball. Don't make the first out or the last out of an inning at third base, so he played it safe. He's already in scoring position.
Rayford's 1 for 2. Broken bat. Biancalana thought about a play at third, but at least he was able to cut it off. And the runners are at first and third on the hit by Rayford.
Remember the last time up?
The center fielder.
It was a sacrifice situation. It was Ron Washington who sacrificed in the fourth. They thought that maybe Rayford might be laying the ball down, which drew Seitzer in closer to third base. By drawing him in, it perhaps took away the chance of him catching that little looping line drive, the broken bat single.
And that's going to do it for Danny Jackson. Stoddard had been warming up earlier.
Still Bob Stoddard. He'll be coming on with a lot of trouble looking at him in the face.
So the Orioles have a 4-2 lead. First and third, nobody out, and we'll be back.
Looking out for number 1.
Briefly with the Tigers, just as briefly with the Padres before bouncing over to the Royals organization. Began the year at Omaha. He was 5-1 there with an ERA under 4 runs a game. Used primarily as a starter at Omaha, but working out of the bullpen now that he's up in the big leagues.
He's a guy that had that hard sinker and slider, and I believe to help him get left-handed hitters out, come up with a little trick pitch. Looks almost like a split-fingered fastball forkball. Trying to get something down and going away from the left-handers. Here's a situation right here. In a 2-run ball game with no outs, Cal Ripken Sr. has got a lot of left-handed hitters on the bench. I mean, he could go to Lynn, Dwyer, Sheets, Kennedy, or even switch hitter Mike Young. But he's going to stick with Gerhardt. Let's see how the strategy works out. There are a lot of managers who said, hey, I'm getting my left-hander in there right now and take a chance of breaking this game wide open. Gerhardt has been struggling. It's a good start. Good running speed, tough to double up. This could be a strategy move, could be questioned later.
Ball 1 high. Jackson worked 5 innings plus. Gave up 4 runs, and he's responsible for these 2 runners, obviously. All 4 are earned. 8 hits, and 7 of the 8 hits bunched into the last 2 innings plus. He walked 3, and he struck out 1. That's on the outside corner. So Jackson had a strong start today, Tony, but if you're Billy Gardner and Gary Blaylock, you can't truly be encouraged by this outing. This doesn't show that he's begun to turn things around. Breaking ball is fouled back. Owen off with the mask, but it's in the seats.
Gerhardt 0 for 2 in the ball game. He has started 18 of the last 23 games. Over that stretch, he's hit below 100 in the last 10 games. So I wonder if Cal Sr. thought of getting a left-handed bat up there. He's got some good ones on the bench.
Just to finish up on Jackson, a 25-year-old left-hander with a live arm, a kid they have high hopes for. It is not fair to say that Jackson has been uniformly terrible despite the 4-10 record, because he has not often had a lot of runs to work with, but neither has he been as excellent as they expected him to be. Breaking ball is hit through the hole, so Stoddard allows one more to score as Washington comes across.
Those are the kind of pitches, Bob, that drive a manager crazy. He's got a one ball and 2 strikes, and he hangs a breaking ball up and in. A mistake? You bet. Watch it. Look where the catcher Owen is set up. He wants the ball away, preferably down. Well, it was a little bit better than I thought it was. Looked like it was up and in from here, but Gerhardt went out and got it and hit what wasn't a bad pitcher's pitch. He may have tried to even want to bounce it, make him swing at a bad ball, but he really went out and got it, standing up on the plate.
The 9th hit for the Orioles. First and second, nobody out on a 5-2 lead. Wiggins turns around to the left side. They look for the bunt, but he slaps it through the middle. The infield was scrambling around. It'll be 6-2. The throw is to third, close there, but now Wiggins moves up to second.
They committed themselves too soon. The Royals defense, they had a rotation play on with Biancalana going to third, Frank White going to first, which left the middle of the diamond completely open. Ripken puts the switch on, doesn't bunt. Stoddard can't get a glove on it, and then Willie Wilson made a bad play too, going to third where he couldn't get the runner, which again removed the force at second, took the double play out. And having trouble scoring runs, as Billy Gardner's team is, you can't make those kind of mistakes. They rotated too quickly, and then a bad throw from the outfield.
So Rayford scored. Gerhardt made third, and on the play on him, Wiggins, with his speed, easily able to move up to second. Now the Royals pull the infield in, trailing 6-2, in danger of losing for the 9th time in their last 10 games. Billy Ripken with Cal on deck. Fastball right down the chute. Jimmy Williams yelling to Billy Ripken from the third base coach's box, and I think all he was telling him was, hey, get that bat off your shoulder. Don't go up there to look. And you could tell by the way Billy reacted when he let that fastball, let her high, go by. He said, boy, there's a pitch I ought to take a rip at.
Especially, and I'm sure that's what Jimmy Williams was telling him too, with the infield and you get a fastball or something up in the strike zone, a pitch you can drive more easily to the outfield. You want to try and avoid the ground ball.
Well, he hits it through the hole anyway. 1 run in. Wiggins heading home. Jackson throws to second base, and it's 8-2. And a 2-for-4 afternoon for Billy Ripken.
The fans here in Royal Stadium, their attendance has been just fantastic this year. They've been drawing like crazy, but you hear a smattering of boos now. Like a slider that didn't bite. To the drawn and infield, he didn't hit it hard, but it found a great hole.
4 runs in this inning on 5 consecutive hits. Double by Washington, and then singles from Rayford, Gerhardt, Wiggins, and Billy Ripken. Cal Ripken has grounded out, doubled, and walked.
You know, Billy Gardner and John Sherholz, the general manager, have elected to go with a 9-man pitching staff, which you can get away with early in the season, especially with a designated hitter. But perhaps the bullpen is wearing a little bit thin. On occasion, they've used some of their starters out of the bullpen now. With still some more trouble, Steve Farr has gotten up. Game on the verge of, if not already broken open. Although the Orioles bullpen has struggled so at times, as you mentioned earlier, perhaps it isn't over yet.
The Orioles trying to win their 4th in a row, dating back to the last game before the All-Star break. Owen thought about a throw to first, but Billy Ripken gets back. Interestingly, in Cal Ripken Jr., you're looking at what is believed to be the tallest man ever to play shortstop in the major leagues on a regular basis. There might have been a player here or there who filled in for a day or two who was taller than Ripken, who's just shy of 6'5".
Well, Ron Hansen was right around 6'4".
6'3" is the way he was officially listed. You were 6'3".
How about Marty Marion? Was he listed at 6'3"? Harvey Keene was about 6'2" or 6'3". Yeah, I stood next to Ron Hansen in playing days, and even now that he's coaching Montreal, I think he's taller than 6'3". But I'll trust you.
Well, Bob
Don't
Brown,
know why.
the media director for the Orioles, went back and checked. And Hansen is listed at 6'3". Marty Marion, known as Slats. You might think he was taller than he actually was because he was so skinny. He only weighed about 160, but Marion listed at 6'2".
Thing about Rip, he's weighs about 220.
Another base hit as Biancalana can't get to it. That's 6 hits in a row.
This is the time where a manager in his home park is going to have to take a little bit of heat. You can't afford to burn your bullpen out. Billy Gardner apparently is going to go to Steve Farr. So Stoddard couldn't hold him after relieving Danny Jackson. See if Steve Farr can.
Well, he will go to the bullpen, but it's been a far cry from what he had in mind.
You know, this is my favorite bar, because everyone here drinks Miller Lite for the same reason I do, because it tastes...
Steve Farr, an unsung hero for the Royals in the playoffs back in '85 in Game 3, when it looked as if the Blue Jays might be in the process of putting together a sweep, leading 2-0, and then in front 5-2 here in Game 3. Farr came in and pretty much held the fort until George Brett could get into his heroic act and pull the game out with a couple of homers and 2 more base hits. And the Royals won that day, moved to within 2-1, and eventually were able to regroup and win the series.
Steve Farr, an indication of what's happened to this Royals bullpen during their 1-win, 9-loss stretch. That 10-game stretch, bullpen is no wins, 4 losses. They haven't had a save. In fact, runners, like situations like this, runners they've inherited, they've let most of them score, hurting the pitcher that preceded them's ERA. So that's been a big problem for Billy Gardner.
The Orioles have 6 consecutive hits. The Major League record is 10 straight hits in an inning. 10 straight in 1 inning. The Orioles were the victim the last time it happened. The Tigers did it to them in the first inning of a game in September of '83. Sparky Anderson's bunch got 10 straight hits with a walk mixed in that game.
Eddie spent a lot of time before he stepped in trying to move the second base umpire, Rich Garcia, out of his line of sight.
Those 10 consecutive hits by the Tigers against the Orioles in '83, the first time it had happened since 1930. 6 straight here. Swing and a miss by Murray. Trailing 8-2, the Royals can think about what the teams ahead of them have done. Oakland lost in extra innings at Fenway today, and Minnesota plays at home tonight against Toronto. Joe Niekro at 5-6 goes for the Twins. Dave Stieb on the comeback trail at 7-5 for the Blue Jays. Toronto is 4 back of the Yankees in the East, and look out for the Tigers. They trail by 5.
Frank Viola, who beat them yesterday, beat the Toronto Blue Jays, is just in an outstanding streak over the last 8 or 10 starts. He's been overpowering. Steve Farr discovered in somewhat of an unusual way. He was stuck in the minor leagues for the Cleveland Indians. Tracy Ringlesby, who was a writer here in Kansas City, suggested to John Sherrills they should take a look at Farr. He told the story of what he did in that league championship series, and since then out of the pen.
Foul back to the screen, still 2-2. Eddie Murray has had 5 seasons where he's driven home better than 100 runs, closing in on 300 as a career batting average and a home run total. 299 his lifetime mark, and 4 homers shy of 300 for his career. That lifetime 300 average is so tough to maintain because when you go into decline, you play a few years where you're still productive, but if you hit 260, 265, it pulls it down.
Ooh, what a good pitch. And somehow Eddie Murray got a little piece of to stay alive. He came with a big breaking ball. It's more difficult for a guy like Murray or Rice, who are sluggers, who are in runs batted in slots. Just a little bitty piece of it is all he got, and that's all he needed. See what he comes back with now. That was a 3-2 curveball, and now does he stick with that, or does he go away?
4 runs home, nobody out, 2 men on, and the 3-2 pitch. He walked him. So 7 consecutive hitters reach base. For statistical purposes, that does keep the streak, the consecutive hit streak, alive. There's those American League East standings.
What will Trout mean to the Yankees, who had come off a couple of shutouts for the Cubs, and Dallas Green, Hugh Alexander, Charlie Fox, who did not inform Gene Michael of the trade, thought that Trout, with that big contract, was at the best he was going to be as far as tradability. Why didn't George Steinbrenner go out and get Jack Morris? Could have gotten him cheaper in the offseason.
That's another question altogether.
And was a more consistent pitcher than Trout. But is that hindsight, or is that collusion?
Or confusion?
One or the other.
Knight has RBI hits his last 2 times. A double and a single, 2 for 3 for the day. Barr's 1-0 pitch. This could be the 7th straight hit with a walk mixed in. It's extra bases. Bounces up against the fence. 1 run home. And the others will hold at second and third. It's 9-2.
Ray Knight, who had been slumping, having a big day with 3 base hits.
Let me correct myself. 2 runs home, 10-2. They're coming at such a dizzying clip, the computer can't keep up. And a big day for Knight, who had been under 200 in his last 25 games and has 2 doubles and a single today. 10-2 Baltimore.
His 3rd RBI for Ray Knight in today's ball game gives him 38 on the season. 4th RBI. Pitch just below the belt. That stayed on the same plane, didn't sink. Saw what Ray did with it.
Now here's Lacey. Had some big years with the Pirates. Also was with the Dodgers earlier in his career.
See, here's a situation, and Billy Gardner's not one that's a headhunter nor is every pitcher, but you get this kind of streak, and if you don't allow a pitcher to move some hitters off the plate, you can keep having. There it is.
There it is. 8 straight hits.
Another great pitcher's pitch. A breaking ball away, and if the umpires and the leagues prevent pitchers from moving hitters off the plate, we are going to see some of the most hellacious offensive shows. It already happened this year. It's going to happen even more next year.
Lacey might be a little upset that he only got 1 RBI on that. Knight stopped at 3rd. Murray trotted home. It's 11-2.
Right, that's what I was talking about earlier. When you lower the strike zone and pitchers are not allowed to come inside and move hitters off the plate, hitters will adjust. They'll keep going down and hit pitchers' pitches just like that. Those are the pitches you're not supposed to hit. Now, once in a while, if you're guessing, but guys are just diving into those pitches and tearing up pitching stacks.
Washington started this inning with a double. That's inside. Well, in fact, when you go back to the beanball battle between the Royals and the Indians in Cleveland, a lot of the Royals suspect that it really began with a game the Indians lost to the White Sox. That's fouled out of play. Something like 16, 17, nothing.
17-0.
The day before, and maybe the Indians got together. Here was a club in last place, and Pat Corrales, as it turned out, just a week or so away from being canned, and they said, look, we've got to establish ourselves. We can't let people kick us around like this, and maybe that put them in a frame of mind to move some people off the plate. Something the Royals had nothing to do with. They just happened to be the next guys into town at the wrong time. But, of course, once it started, the Royals did more than their share, including throwing twice at Brett Butler right at the start of a game. Breaking ball swung on and missed, 2-2.
Well, I think the umpire was willing to give Danny Jackson 1 shot after the night before. Frank White, an 0-2 pitch, got low-bridged. 0-2 pitch to Jamie Quirk. He got hit on the hand, just protected his face. But when the second pitch came in, it was a breaking ball. The umpires felt it was enough.
Well, finally, the string of Oriole hitters reaching base is concluded. And it draws nearly a standing ovation. Certainly some noise from the Royals fans. 9 straight hitters had reached, 8 with hits, 1 walk mixed in.
Nothing else, it takes a little bit of the heat off Bo Jackson, doesn't it? Railing on the pitching staff, the bullpen especially for these Royals.
The Orioles come within 2 hits of the major league record for consecutive hits in an inning. Rayford had a single earlier. Down to third, Seitzer. To White for 1, on to first, and a double play. But it's a 7-run 6th inning for Baltimore.
I am master of ancient art of karate, kung fu, and the Chinese chuckle. But the one about the socializing, I always reach for a cold Miller Light. Light tastes great. Light less filling too. Hey, anybody want the pepperoni?
Ancient proverb, only one light beer, Miller Lite.
It's the Subaru Value Celebration, the greatest Subaru deals in Subaru history. Stop! That's one Subaru commercial you won't see the rest of. What's really important isn't hoopla, but a great deal on a great car, like up to $1,500 cash back on a Subaru. With the money you can save now at your Subaru dealer, you can have your own celebration. Up to $1,500 factory cash back on a Subaru. Or now you can get Subaru's 3.9% financing. That's really cause for celebration.
I don't need drugs. I believe in me and my ability. I don't want anything interfering with the way I play the game. Cocaine's no way to believe in yourself. It can kill you. If you're into cocaine, get off it. You're living a lie. Get off it while you still have a life.
Cocaine, the big lie. Call 1-800-662-HELP. Furnished by Major League Baseball in cooperation with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Tomorrow on NBC Sports World, 4 Eastern, 2 out on the West Coast, the CART Toronto Indy. That's tomorrow for all you auto racing fans here on NBC. Well, Mike Flanagan trying to end a personal 8-game losing streak that dates back to August of '86. 0-5 this year. His first big league appearance since May 15th. Suddenly given some extreme breathing room, leading 11-2 as we go to the last half of the 6th.
His last outing 5 days ago at Rochester, he went just 5 innings. There's 3 outings down there. Asked Cal Ripken Sr. and Mike before the ball game how far he wants to. He said, as long as I feel good, I'm going to keep on going. I want to get a complete game if I can. Something he did well early in his career. He was a good finisher. Lloyd Rayford reminding Mike Flanagan, stay on top. Start getting tired. Force yourself if you can. If the shoulder starts trying to stay on top of the ball, because he's had a very good breaking ball and changed speeds well on that curveball over the last couple of innings. Just in case Cal Ripken Sr. has his bullpen going. I mean, this has happened to the Orioles too much this season, where they've had big leads and teams have overcome them and they end up going down to defeat, especially in June. I mean, they've lost 7-run leads more than one time this year.
Tartabull is singled and walked as he steps up to start the last half of the 6th and takes one up and in for a ball. What's the word on McGregor at Rochester? When might he come back?
They asked him if he would go down, and he felt, and they felt, Hank Peters, the general manager, was the best thing for him to do. And they felt he lost his confidence. He wasn't throwing strikes. There's no physical problems. So basically, they're going to wait till he pitches a bunch of games well, I would think. That should have been caught right there.
Ron Washington has had occasional problems at third base today.
This may be
well, this is at least a triple and maybe more, even with an 11-2. Tartabull's coming all the way. We'll see how they score it, but he comes across.
It was hit rather sharply, but I would think it'd be a 4-base error. We'll see.
Well, it could be a double and then E7 to allow it to become more than that. There's a lot of ways they could
give
score
two
it.
errors. You can give an error to the third baseman and the left fielder.
You be the judge.
Watch Washington. He plants the foot. He was off the line a lot. The ball goes underneath his glove. He had trouble with the ball to his left earlier in the game. In Minnesota, he was basically a middle infielder, some short, some second base, treating him as a utility player there. So now it gets by Alan Wiggins also.
Well, we know for sure Wiggins is going to get an error, and we'll wait and see how the first half of the play is scored. I'm thinking, if I had to guess, it's a double
E7.
and then E7.
That's what it is. E7. I think there could have been two on that.
So Tartable has his second hit, and the Royals their third run, trailing 11-3 as Frank White steps in. He's 1 for 2. White was one of those among the most vocal in criticizing Bo Jackson immediately after he announced his decision to play football. Willie Wilson said they treat Bo like God. Frank White said, look, it's not about winning games anymore. It's about putting a show on the field. But I think all of the Royals who were critical immediately have reconsidered. This one is lofted down the left field line, and it'll get back in the seats. Have reconsidered after John Schuerholz, the general manager, addressed the team. Now, one thing Schuerholz said is that this came out wrong. It should have been announced through the team rather than Bo on his own. And the use of the word hobby for his off-season exploits was certainly unfortunate. But Schuerholz pointed out that Jackson has no guarantees in his contract. Well, in fact, the contract will now be reworked to protect the Royals against possible football injuries. And he said to some of the others, a few of whom have lifetime contracts that have some peculiar provisions in them. This ball is hit into center. It's going to drop for a hit. And White is aboard. It'll be Bo Jackson's turn now. He said to some of them, look, if you want to give up all the guarantees in your contract and work on a year-to-year basis, well, we'll let you go hang gliding or play with the Boston Celtics or do whatever you want if you want to do it.
Cal Ripken has had Doug Corbett up and throwing in his bullpen. You know, there are all kinds of talk about what the Bo Jackson, there's Corbett on the left, what Bo Jackson's contract will read. You know, they cajoled the Royals, John Schuerholz primarily, cajoled Bo Jackson to stay away from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Al Davis does the same thing to split the season of Bo Jackson. Some have said that he's going to get $1 million per year, I've read, from the Raiders. Some have said he's got $2.5 million for 3 years. Some have said there are stipulations in Bo's contract with the Raiders. He will only be a decoy, carry the ball so many times. I don't know how much is that fact and how much is rumor. Not a bad outing by Mike Flanagan. He looked like he was going to get hurt early, but then the breaking ball came along. We'll be back after these messages, folks.
Doug Corbett comes out of the Baltimore bullpen. Cal Ripken Sr. has to be pretty satisfied with what he got out of Flanagan, and Flanagan lasts long enough to qualify as the pitcher of record and pick up his first victory. Now, we might or might not see Bo Jackson. If it were a closer game, almost certainly Eisenreich, with the right-hander coming on, would bat for Jackson, but not now.
In fact, right after Bo Jackson was pinch hit for, he had a 3-strikeout game, I believe, up in Toronto. He tried to bunt in the 2-2 ball game, which upset Billy Gardner when he was sitting down in the lineup. Tried to bunt for a base hit with the weak part of the lineup. And so right after that, the press conference was held, and agent announced he'd go to the Raiders. But I think he thought about it a lot longer than that. Billy talks about Bo Jackson's great physical talent, and he is learning how to play, but perhaps, Billy didn't say this, he should have spent a little more time in the minor leagues. Notice anything strange as you looked at Doug Corbett when he was taking his warm-up tosses?
Well, he's wearing eye black.
Well, is that strange for a pitcher?
I would say so.
What you've ever seen. Corbett swears he saw, I think, Gaylord Perry years ago, and he said, it helps me when I talk to Gaylord Perry about it to see the signs better to cut the glare down. Hey, whatever works, huh?
All right, here's Bo. Struck out twice, takes low. Now, one more point about Bo Jackson. It isn't just that the Royals will be protected with additional contractual clauses against his being injured. There's one thing they can never be protected against, and that's uncertainty. This ball is bounced foul. Even if you can say, well, Mr. Fogelman, Mr. Schuerholz, If Bo Jackson is hurt, you're not responsible for it. You don't have to pay him anything. What happens if he's hurt in January and you've already passed on certain deals you could have made, you've already made moves or not made them, predicated upon his presence in your lineup? Normally, you think when a season ends, you've got an idea of what your roster will be when the next one begins. At least you know who's available to you, who you can make moves with, what holes you need to plug. But in Jackson's case, you go week to week with a giant question mark. He's not playing basketball like Gene Conley did or Danny Ainge was able to do. Certainly a risk of injury, but not as great as in a contact sport like football. He's going out and playing football with the Raiders every week. Here's the 1-2. And he strikes out for the third time today. At his present pace, counting 3 straight strikeouts today, he'd fan more than 220 times this season. Incaviglia of Texas is also on a pace to strike out more than 200 times. He set the American League record by fanning 185 times last year, and you can see how Bo is becoming more and more frustrated.
Well, he has made the statement. He said, hey, I don't mind striking out. He said the media makes a lot out of it, and some of the fans. And you can see when he threw his bat down the runway, strikeouts bother him more because it's an embarrassing thing when you strike out this much. More than he's letting out, it's embarrassing and hurting him.
As we mentioned earlier, the Major League record by Bobby Bonds when he was with the Giants in the National League, 189. And it looks like Jackson will go right past those strikeout totals.
Well, let's face it, compared to even 10 years ago, we're talking old hat stuff, there is less of a stigma in many people's minds as far as striking out. Just look at last year. Conseco's, Incaviglia, Torrey Snyder's, that all did. And they're more in a high strikeout pace this year. And perhaps that accounts for a few more home runs also, where you get the 2 strikes, you keep swinging hard, you don't give in and try and put the ball in play. Wow, that is a heavy total. Yeah, strikeouts do bother you, don't they, both? No matter what you say.
Biancalana tries to go the other way, but this one falls in foul territory.
The thing about Bo Jackson striking out so much, he doesn't take a whole lot of bases on balls. And again, we saw him strike out on the pitch out of the strike zone. You know, Mandel, who'd strike out 100 times but walking 120, you live with that because the on-base average is still high. What he's doing is hard to put him in the middle of the lineup, keep a rally going if he won't take the walk. Will he ever learn? I guess that's the big question.
Well, the guy he's sitting next to can't offer him many tips. Steve Balboni has gone down swinging more often than most. Balboni's a guy whose career is a definite question mark at this point. Brett moved over to first. They've got a DH platoon now, and Eisenreich and Smith. Balboni, once a 30 home run man for them, might soon be looking for another team. Full count to Biancalana. Liner caught by Corbett, and he gets it over to Murray in time for the double play.
It's easy to say a good play by Corbett, but it's easier to say, and you should say, that it's not a good base running move. Yeah, it is somewhat bang-bang, but you've got your base runner this far down, wait till the ball hits the ground.
The Royals get a run, but trail 11-3, and we'll be right back after these messages from your local station.
Tonight, it's a vendetta. Hunter's been abducted, and Dee Dee gets a flaky new partner.
Great, because I want to fix these nails.
Hunter faces double jeopardy tonight.
When I was a football coach, sure I was tough on my players, and they loved me for it. Shucks, that's why they invited me here tonight, to share some Miller Lights and to show their appreciation. You know, light tastes great and it's less filling. So here's to the greatest emotion in the world, the friendship between a coach and his players. No thanks, boys, I gave up cigars.
For a great get-together, there's only one light beer. Miller Lite.
I just love these reunions, don't you, boys? They love me.
I'm here in this auto graveyard to demonstrate New Finish, the once-a-year car polish. Simply wipe it on and wipe it off. There's no rubbing, no buffing. Look how New Finish restored a deep, hard shine to even this weather-beaten old car. You see, New Finish is not a wax. It's a space-age polymer formula that shines better and lasts longer. And here's proof. An independent laboratory tested New Finish against several leading brands of car polish. After simulating a full year of punishing weather, New Finish had the highest gloss and actually retained 90% of its original shine. Next, we polished this car with New Finish and ran it through 52 car washes. After all the harsh detergents and scrubbing, the water still beads. You'll find New Finish is great for fiberglass boats, too. So get New Finish, the once-a-year car polish. And between polishings, use New Finish Poly Car Wash to clean your car. It's specially formulated to help preserve and maintain your car's finish.
New Finish only at Perry Drug, Murray Auto Stores, Montgomery Ward, True Value, ACO, Revco, and now Kmart.
Coming of age, beginning Monday on News 4 at 5.
The center fielder, Ken Garrett.
Well, I thought I'd heard it all with some of these fantasy camps and dream weeks. Seems like every club in the majors has one where the Walter Middies can go down to Florida or Arizona and play with some of the old-timers that they watched when they were in their primes. And now Davey Johnson and Whitey Herzog are putting together a fishing fantasy camp where if you want to pay whatever the fee is, you can hang around with Davey Johnson and Whitey Herzog in Florida, swap baseball stories, and sit in the boat and catch some fish. Well, now, Rich Garcia, who's at second base today, tells me about an umpire's dream week. Gerhardt swinging and missing at the curveball.
They don't have many
Steve
during
Barr.
the season. They better plan one during the offseason.
No, they have some nightmares during the season with all they have to put up with. So anyway, some of the famous names in the past in umpiring are getting together. Augie Donatelli, Shag Crawford, Ed Vargo, Ron Luciano, Marty Springstead, a few others. And in conjunction with some of the fantasy camps, bouncing ball down to third, sights are near the bag, throws across to Brett, and they get Gerhardt, who runs pretty well. In conjunction with some of the fantasy camps bringing the old players back, they're going to bring the umpires together, too. And they figure if you ever wanted to be an umpire or would like a chance to punch your favorite ball player out on strikes, you can do it by writing to Dream Week 88, Post Office Box 115, Huntington Valley, Pennsylvania.
And what time of the year will this
Will be in
week umpiring celebrity whatever take place?
Late January in Clearwater, Florida.
I'm only going if Pam Postema is invited. On the Pacific Coast League.
Don't
Larry
invite
Boa's
Pam Postema along with Larry Boa or Toby Harrah,
Oh, I know it.
each of whom have been tough to the point of extreme profanity with Ms. Postema. Here is Seitzer cutting in front of Bianca Lana. He picks up a couple of quick assists as we start the seventh. The Orioles leading 11-3.
That way, this kid's played not only with the bat, but at third base, as you just saw. It's going to make the Brett move look a lot better and a lot easier for Billy Gardner to make.
Bill Ripken.
Are you enrolling for this camp, or you're big in the celebrity camp entourage field?
Yeah, I'm on call at all times. Billy Ripken has 2 hits, takes a strike. Well, for all of you who would like to be for a week one of the men in blue, we're talking Dream Week 88, P.O. Box 115, Huntington Valley, Pennsylvania.
Are you getting a cut on this, the way you're promoting this? I mean, this is incredible. You're going on for...
Garcia's
I know it.
A nice guy, and the score is 11-3 in the 7th.
You're getting 10% aside from that. The umpire's agent, Bob Costas. Where should Richie send the check?
There will be no check necessary. Breaking ball is squibbed foul.
You know, some of the great storytellers, and I know we don't belabor this anymore, like Marty Springstead and some of the others, I mean, they're great storytellers. The things they went through in the minor leagues, some of them 10, 12, 15 years making no money at all to get to the big leagues. Wouldn't the late Tom Gorman have enjoyed being at that one?
The 0-2 pitch. It's sharply White has it, whirls around and throws him out. Tom Gorman, who passed away about a year or so ago, was buried in his umpire's suit with the ball and strike indicator in his hand. The count set to 3-2. Here's another edition of 7th inning stretch.
Gatorade Thirst Quencher presents the 7th inning stretch. Gatorade is thirst aid for that deep down body thirst. Chicago has been called the city of broad shoulders, and in 1984, a member of the Cubs helped shoulder the load of winning the National League East with strong performances at the plate and in the field. Can you name him?
I'm thirsty for it, you know what I mean? Sweating in the sun, need something cool and clean. Yeah, thirsty for it, 9 degrees in the shade. I'm thirsty for it, now I need
cuts through thirst like Gatorade Thirst Quencher. It speeds in fluids and minerals and supplies energy to working muscles.
I'm thirsty, thirsty, thirsty for that Gatorade. Gatorade is thirsty for that deep down body thirst.
Ryne Sandberg added a new dimension to the long-standing love affair between the Cubbies and their fans. Sandberg's 1984 dream season made a Chicago dream come true. On his way to the MVP award, Sandberg hit .314 with 36 doubles, 19 triples, and a league-leading 119 runs scored. And best of all, Rhino and the Cubs finished first for the first time in almost 40 years.
So, for any of you who didn't get that address, maybe we'll just hold it up.
Out of here. What is this? Get this guy a gag. It was our fun. You know who's running that fishing camp for Whitey and Davy Johnson?
Pray tell who?
Hoshite, who's retiring from baseball. He's the bullpen coach, managed a lot of big league players. So, another fan. I get 10% of this one.
Good. Ought to be very lucrative for you. About as profitable as the day has been for the Kansas City Royals, who trail 11-3 as we move to the last half of the seventh. Catcher Larry Owen will start it. The catching situation for the Royals is a very confused one. They got Ed Hearn before the season began. They had sent Jim Sundberg on his way to the Cubs. And they got Ed Hearn, who was thought to be the guy who could be their #1 catcher. He went over in the deal that sent a good-looking young pitcher, David Cohn, to the Mets. And then Hearn comes up with a rotator cuff problem that threatens his entire career. It hasn't just ended his season. He may not play again. That remains to be seen. So now, as they try and head into a pennant stretch, they have an unsettled catching situation. They do have a kid on the farm in Omaha named Mike McFarlane, but he's not quite ready.
They've got 20 RBIs out of that catching spot, including Ed Hearn's 3 RBIs. And can you afford lack of run production in that spot when you're not getting run production from your shortstop spot? Salazar playing well defensively, but not hitting very well. Bo Jackson striking out a lot.
Breaking ball on the outside corner, 1-2. Owen has a pair of singles today. Last half of the seventh, 11 runs, 14 hits, and an error for the Orioles. 3-9-0 for the Royals.
But the strength of this Royals team, they had a lot of speed when Hal McRae was a younger player. When Frank White could run well. Willie Wilson stealing this year, but he used to steal more. Brett used to run better. So it'll have to be their pitching staff, basically, that will hold them in this thing in the West. And their bullpen's struggling, which is going to make it even tougher.
The Royals conclude the season here. The last 3 games of the season are against Minnesota. It's possible that those 3 could determine the division winner.
You know, they talk about Oakland and Tony La Russa with all the sluggers they've got. Reggie Jackson before the All-Star game swinging a better bat. Now they've got Tony Bernazart. They released Ron Say. So Oakland also has 3 or 4 outstanding arms at their AAA level, which could help them along the way in case some of their pitchers falter.
3-2 to Owen. We'd have to check, but I'm wondering when the last time was the Orioles swept a series anywhere, let alone on the road. Assuming they win this one, they'll go for a 4-game sweep tomorrow with Dave Schmidt, who's 9-2 against Bud Black, who's 4-4. Owen works Corbett for a walk.
Walks have caused problems so far in this ball game. Back in the 5th, Wiggins was walked leading an inning off. He came on to score. 4th inning, Tartable was walked leading off. He came home to score. Now Owen walks. That's the one thing that Cal Ripken Sr., he's been most disappointed with his own managing, that he hasn't gotten to the pitching staff to throw more strikes.
Eddie Murray can't come up with it. Owen stops at second. Base hit for Wilson. I'm not saying Eddie should have made that play, but it does bring a point to mind. There was a time when Murray was no worse than the second best defensive first baseman in the league behind Don Mattingly of the Yankees. And he might have gotten a vote here or there for a Gold Glove. His play in the field has fallen off.
Well, for a while there, they were suspecting that his eyesight was not allowing him to pick the ball off the bat. So they had his eyes checked, and they said it checked out fine. he has had back problems, hamstring problems, which may have really cut his mobility down.
Lonnie Smith. Foul ball. When Vince Coleman emerged in St. Louis, it pushed Smith out of the Cardinals outfield picture. This was early 1985, and they sent him to Kansas City in a deal that brought John Morris, pretty good young outfielder, to the Cardinals. Lonnie's still looking for his first hit at the major league level this season. He hit well over 300 at Omaha while he was getting in shape there. Corbett drops down sidearm, and Smith fouls it off. 0-2.
Royals have been a very streaky baseball team, as many have been this year in Major League Baseball. And the thing about it, even though they're on this bad streak, they're not out of a pennant race. But this seems to be indicative of what the Western Division American League has become, similar to what the Eastern Division National League was for so many years until the Mets ran rampant last year.
In the dirt, that bounces away from Rayford. The runners move up to second and third. Wild pitch will be charged to Corbett.
8-run lead. You walk the leadoff hitter. It'll also show you, after Corbett has been released by a couple of teams, the futility of this Orioles pitching staff, especially their bullpen. Went out and got Niedenfuhr, who has struggled. Corbett to try and resurrect his career. I mean, the man gets no rest. Cal Ripken Jr., I don't think there's any chance that his job's in jeopardy this year. So Ripken Sr. at least will go in the next year and hope he can get this team back on the beam.
Down goes Lonnie Smith.
You know, you got a problem. I don't know how seriously the front office of the Orioles, Mr. Edward Williams or Hank Peters, thinks about it, but if you end up firing a Cal Sr., Jr. becomes a free agent shortly, which would immediately upset Jr.'s best friend, Eddie Murray, who's a little disenchanted with the organization right now, as we understand. So it would be a very, very touchy thing to do. But as I said, I don't think there's any question his job is in jeopardy. He's done a good job with what has happened to his pitching staff. A solid, solid baseball man.
Seitzer's 1 for 3. Ball 1 to him. After the 85 season, Seitzer was left unprotected. He was not on the 40-man winter roster of the Royals. Any team in baseball could have had him for 25 grand. Just as the Red Sox left Wade Boggs unprotected at one time. Sometimes, and here's a slow roller to third base, Washington comes in, throws Seitzer out, and meanwhile, not only does a run score, but Wilson scoots across from second to third. Owen scoring to make it 11-4. Sometimes a player doesn't have the obvious physical skills that will impress scouts on first glance, and he can be underrated at the minor league level. A guy like Seitzer, for example, hit over or very near 300 at every minor league stop. Boggs spent about 5 years in the minors and consistently hit well over 300, and it took years to convince the Red Sox that he could play at the major league level. Here's Brett.
Seitzer's throwing arm doesn't impress you. You see him every day. His running speed doesn't until you see him every day. And he had George Brett ahead of him at third base, who looks like he's going to be indestructible there a few years back, although he has had a lot of injuries. But, you know, they felt Seitzer may have been available, I guess, if he didn't want to protect him. Looked like Balboni was going to be the slugger at first base till he couldn't cut his strikeouts down, then hurt his back. Does he resemble Dick Hauser to you? Young Dick Hauser? Facially?
A little bit.
Yeah, you get up close to him, there's really a facial resemblance.
Here's the 2-0 pitch to Brett. Down and in 3-0. By bringing up these points, we're not comparing Seitzer in present ability or even in potential to Wade Boggs. Simply saying that a player of obvious major league caliber can occasionally be overlooked even by his own organization. Brett's 1 for 3. He's singled and flied out twice. And that's in there, 3-1. Corbett had some good seasons with the Twins out of the bullpen and moments of effectiveness for Gene Mauch in California. But injuries have had him yo-yoing back and forth, organization to organization. This is hit up the middle. Brett has his second hit. And the Royals have their 5th run as Wilson comes across.
Well, you would think, with the game appearing like it was blown out with that big 6th inning, when 11 went to the plate in a 7-run inning for Cal Ripken's Orioles, but he still can't rest his bullpen because the history of this ball club this far and that pitching staff has been for other teams to come back. So even though Corbett's in there, who has struggled since they got him, Rip Sr.'s had to have his bullpen going again.
Earlier, we raised the question, when was the last time the Orioles swept a series? Well, the answer is in late May at Oakland, they won 4 straight. And then proceeded to take a short 2-game set against the Angels in Baltimore on the heels of that. Right at the end of May. At that point, they had a 6-game winning streak. But who was it that once wrote April is the cruelest month? Not for the Baltimore Orioles. That was June. As soon as they turned the calendar from May to June, Baltimore went into an incredible swoon. So somebody notified T.S. Eliot through a seance, I guess. The Orioles were 5-23 in June and then continued that into early July for a stretch that saw them lose 30 of 35. So we forget that there was a time in late May when they were actually over 500 and within a few games of first place.
Well, the Orioles' problem didn't start in June. As you said, they had an excellent May, but the last part of last season, they took a terrible tumble. They couldn't buy a win over the last month and a half or 2 months of last year. They got the new blood of Cal Ripken, Earl Weaver left. Really get the pitching staff going, but the arms haven't been there for this ball club. You can't find any hard throwers, and there aren't many left down at Rochester, the AAA level. Hank Peters trying to rebuild the farm system. And he will, if they let him do it. Hank Peters had a lot to do with building the Oakland A's farm system for Charlie Finley.
Tardiveau goes after a bad pitch up and in. 2 balls and 2 strikes. With 2 outs and Brett at first, 2 runs home in this last half of the 7th. 11-5 Baltimore. And this one is rolled foul. You know, there are a few constants in the modern era in baseball, but 2 have always been the Orioles and the Dodgers. Maybe they didn't win every year, but they were always in contention, always quality teams. Now, for unrelated reasons, but almost simultaneously, the Dodgers and the Orioles, 2 very proud organizations, almost textbook organizations, have experienced hard times.
And traditionally, those 2 teams you mentioned have always had as good a pitching staffs as anybody in baseball.
Full count. Last year, the Orioles finished last for the first time in the history of the franchise, not counting the old St. Louis Browns, counting the Orioles as a separate franchise after the move. Look at that. 50 home runs allowed and an opposing batting average over 300 during that month. This one's hit to third. Ron Washington plays it cleanly, throws Tardiveau out. 2 runs make it more respectable, but won't get it done for the Orioles. That's 7 run, or for the Royals, I should say. That's 7.
Nothing beats a cold Miller Lite when you're watching a game under the hot sun, eh, Sparky?
Yeah, you great seats, too.
I bought them last week, got them on sale. It's almost like being at the park.
For the best taste under the sun, there's only one light beer, Miller Lite.
Buys a murder, though.
Buy yourself a little freedom.
Whenever my husband was at work, I was stuck without a car. But not anymore. I just bought myself a little freedom. I bought a Yugo. At $39.90, Yugo is freedom everyone can afford. It has rack and pinion steering, front-wheel drive, and a lot more. Surprised?
We wouldn't have bought a car.
We didn't believe in.
Buy a little freedom, buy a Yugo.
Yugo, America's most affordable new cars.
If you can dream it, you can do it. Today, the Prudential can show you a new world of financial opportunities. Look to the Rock for mutual funds, stocks and bonds. Feel its strength in CDs, insurance and mortgages. With the right choices, the right guidance, the sky's the limit. The Prudential. your rock in financial services.
Three out of 4 Indy drivers prepare their engines with a special high-performance oil treatment. Its name, STP.
STP is the racer's edge.
7 runs in the top half of the 6th inning for the Orioles. That's the big outburst, and they lead it 11-5 as we move to the top of the 8th. That inning saw 9 straight Orioles reach base, 8 hits and a walk.
The shortstop.
Danny Jackson was sent packing at the start of that inning after the first 2 men got hits. Bob Stoddard couldn't get anybody out. And then finally Steve Farr came in.
This Oriole team, I believe, will cause some problems near the end of the season. I think they're going to do a lot better against the East than they did, principally because their pitching staff's going to be better. Flanagan, a very positive outing for him today, I thought, Bob. Once he got over the early part of the ball game. So Cal Ripken Sr., you look at sons who played for their fathers. Cornelius McGillicuddy was in that suit on the bench coaching his kid, managing him. You own the ball club, you don't have much of a risk of getting fired, and I guess that's why he managed for 50-plus years. But he's got to be happy with Boddicker now, who's pitching decently. Dave Schmidt's been a savior for this pitching staff coming out of the bullpen. Last 4 games, the pitching's been better, the starting pitching. Oh, we've had the same problem. Remember when he had his pitchers between starts throwing batting practice because he felt they had some of his starters had forgotten how to get hitters out?
2-1 to Ripken, followed by Murray and Knight in the 8th. 11-5 Baltimore. The contrast in the middle of the infield for the Orioles. Ripken Jr. is there day in, day out, but since the days of Rich Dower, they've never been able to find the permanent second baseman. Burleson recently released. They tried Bonilla there for a while. 3-2 now.
And they had a tradition of outstanding second baseman. Underrated, a Bobby Gritch, who's just outstanding offensively and defensively. Davey Johnson before that. Dower was good defensively till the legs went. He didn't give the offense that Earl Weaver liked anyway.
And a walk to open the 8th. And, of course, Wiggins has never claimed the job. And now this is the first week in the majors for Billy Ripken. There he is.
They feel they probably rushed Billy Ripken a little bit because of the bat. Defensively, they know they haven't. He'll make the double play. He'll start it and pivot on it very well. So they wanted really, with the pitching staff struggling, give them some defensive help in the middle of the diamond. They felt they needed the most.
Murray was robbed of a hit by Jackson in the 2nd on a running catch. Had a triple in the 4th. Struck out in the 5th and walked in the 6th. And here is a shot to right center field, but it won't carry far enough. Over for the catch is Tartabull.
Steve Farr looked like he hit Eddie Murray a little bit up on the 5th toward the trademark. Eddie thought he should have been on the pitch and was, and the ball may have had a little bit of cut on it. I don't mean a cut physically, but a little cutting action like a slider or a sailor that sailed it on his fist. Although these days, who knows? I mean, Gene Michael of the Cubs is threatened if they don't do something, that he will teach all his pitchers how to scuff the baseball.
Now, what is Knight saying to Rick Reed? Good breaking pitch from Farr for a called strike 1. And this time did he go? Yes, he did. 0-2. John Hirschbeck with the call at first. Knight has snapped out of a slump today, going 3 for 4 with 4 RBIs. He came in hitting .263. He's hit as high as .318. That was back in 1979 when he took over from Pete Rose at third base in Cincinnati, with Pete moving over to the Phillies. Hit .298 last year with those 11 home runs for the Mets, and then, of course, was the World Series MVP.
Hey, going into today, Knight was 1 RBI in 17 games.
That's his 4th hit.
He did about $1.50, 150 for about 23 or 4 straight games, so sure they're happy to see his bat going again. Terry Crowley, who is a hitting instructor, Frank Robinson helps out in that department also.
Up comes Lacey, who got his first hit of the day in that 7-run 6th inning. An RBI single that accounted for the last Oriole run. Fastball for a strike.
This is not an easy thing for a manager to do, as Billy Gardner's having to do today, to say to Steve Farr, hey, pal, with a 9-man staff, no matter what happens, you've got to give me innings and finish this baby off. I don't want to embarrass you, but you got to understand my position with a 9-man pitching staff and a bullpen that's been relatively ineffective.
Breaking ball hit off the leg of Farr. He struggles to recover, but the bases will be loaded.
Remember what Hugh Alexander, the super scout, works with the Cubs now, told us yesterday. He said, I sit behind home plate and have for 30, 40, 50 years, different times. And he said, I've never seen so many pitches go right down the middle of the plate at 82 miles an hour. Here's an 0-2 count, and it's a breaking ball that's belt high right down the middle. Again, it's one of those deals where a pitcher is afraid to take a fastball and run it up and in on keep the hitter off the plate. And you get tentative. Next thing you know, you roll the breaking ball up there and it doesn't bite. Here's what happens to you.
Actually, that ball didn't get Farr's leg. As you can see on the replay, he got his glove down in front of his body in time, but it glanced off the leather. And now the bases are loaded for Washington. Remember that game on a Friday night last weekend of the season in '85 at Cleveland? Or I guess it was 84. 84, I should say, at Cleveland, when Minnesota, still in the race with the Royals, had a 10-0 lead behind Frank Viola and somehow lost 11-10.
Jerry Gaetti at third, who admitted that the pressure got to him and he made a bad play. It opened up the floodgates.
And this one is popped up on the infield.
George can't find it.
Well, White is in behind him, and the infield fly rule is called as he makes the catch. What I started to say is that Ron Washington, who's now retired on that pop-up, had 5 RBIs in that game for Minnesota, playing for Billy Gardner. They led 10-0 in the final weekend of the pennant race, and Joe Carter hit 2 home runs to spark a comeback by the Indians, who won 11-10. And Dick Hauser and the Royals found out about it on the West Coast, where they were playing a late game against Oakland, and they had themselves a half pennant. And then, of course, were swept in the playoffs that year, 3 straight, by the Tigers, with Detroit on their way to a world championship, before Kansas City came back and won it all the next year.
Since then, Gary Gaetti's won a Gold Glove and become one of the best at his position. You know, that last call in the infield fly was almost called too soon by the umpires. George Brett couldn't find it. And that ball drops in. You pop that hand up too soon, declare the batter automatically out. Gets you in trouble if you're umpiring. Maybe they'll teach that at the celebrity umpiring school. Don't call it too quickly.
Perhaps they will. The Giants and Atlee Hammaker defeat Greg Maddux and the Cubs 9-2, and now San Diego, after trailing 3-1, has come back against the Cardinals to tie it in the 8th. Here's a curveball, lofted into shallow center. Wilson is there, and the Orioles are going to leave the bases loaded. Their frustration is tempered by the fact that they own an 11-5 lead as we go to the last half of the 8th.
For every man who wears Brute deodorant, there's a woman who will always be glad that he did. Because a man who wears Brute deodorant is nice to be close to. Brute, it smells like a man.
Great.
All the right parts in all the right places. Napa's putting smiles on American faces.
Napa means auto parts. So dependable, every Napa brand part is backed by the Napa National Warranty Program. Parts for import and domestic cars are available through 6,500 Napa stores all across the country. Or get Napa quality at garages and service stations where you see the Napa sign. Wherever you go, Napa's the one.
All the right parts in all the right places. Napa.
What harm can a little water do? Ordinary paint can't withstand the sneaking, creeping effects of water and time. That's why there's Rust-Oleum. We put our own exclusive ingredients in for one simple reason: to keep moisture out. So if it's going to get wet, get Rust-Oleum. Zenith's clean, cube-shaped styling gives you so much screen from side to side and corner to corner, it makes watching television a whole new ball game. Zenith. Quality.
The Orioles have 11 runs on 16 hits. They've committed an error, 5-11-0 for Kansas City. There was a point early this month where the Royals were 45-35, 10 over 500. That was their best record of the season. Since then, they've been in a bit of a tailspin, and unless they rally here, they will have lost 9 of 10 and 4 in a row. They began the day 3 games over 500 at 46-43.
Was that debris in the dugout thrown at them by the fans?
If so, each of these fans has an excellent breaking ball that would allow it to go over the roof and then dip back down and in. White is 2 for 3.
Can you imagine this kind of stretch, this losing streak that the Royals have been on? What would happen to this team on the Eastern Seaboard with Red Sox fans or Philadelphia fans or Yankee fans? Show you the difference in the atmosphere in the middle of the country as opposed to the Eastern Seaboard, where newspapers are probably tougher and fans are tougher. Right here in Kansas City area, America's heartland, it's like these are the fans' darlings, and only a smattering of boos so far today.
Corbett fans White to start the last half of the 8th, and we may hear a few boos now for Bo Jackson.
The left fielder, Bo Jackson.
You know how he got his nickname? It was originally, as a kid, Boar, B-O-A-R. He was involved in an incident with a bunch of his friends as a kid where they went into a preacher's yard and they literally slaughtered some of the preacher's pigs, and he came out with a shotgun. Boar was shortened to Bo, and Bo says that straightened out his life. If he hadn't gotten caught, he might have had a childhood that would have led to a lot worse things. He said getting caught straightened out his life, and a lot of his friends also. I know you found that story very interesting.
I did. I was just taking a moment to digest it all. 1-1.
Fortunately, the Reverend, the Baptist preacher down there, didn't shoot straight with that shotgun.
2 balls and a strike to Jackson. The 0 for 3, if you've just joined us, on 3 consecutive strikeouts. Look at that. His strikeout average is .415.
Vincent Edward Jackson.
And there are some derisive cheers as he makes contact and whacking that one foul.
You know, he's had this little bit of a habit that Hal McRae, the hitting instructor, has tried to stay away from correcting. He wraps the bat almost where the barrel is pointing out to center field, like Dick Allen did and several other hitters. There was a stretch and they said, stop wrapping the bat. So he held it straight up and he hit 2 home runs, but then he struck out a couple of times and went right back to that long looping swing. Boy, as he cut down trying to avoid this strikeout, he is just pecking at the ball.
Although that high breaking ball was probably out of the strike zone.
He has swung at a lot of pitches this ball game that have been out of the strike zone.
And until he shows restraint, that's all he's going to see.
Sure. Some people feel that decent fastballs you cannot get around on either, and that's trouble if you're a young player.
Well, that time he just stood and watched a perfectly good pitch go by.
You know, this is really a really decent kid, too. I know Dean Vogelar, one of the vice presidents here, PR guy, he said he is such a hard worker, such a good kid. He has a little bit of a speech impediment. In fact, I think he's going for his degree at school during the offseason. I don't know what he'll do if he plays football, to get his degree in helping kids who have speech disabilities. But he's a nice kid, but you can just see he's just torn up inside, even though outwardly he doesn't show it. The fans booing is not helping him. He never was booed when he played football, I guarantee you that. A guy that is a running back has more speed than O.J. Simpson, and they say more lower body strength than Earl Campbell. me how physically tough he is.
Biancalana bounces one to Cal Ripken, and he throws him out. So, Corbett fans White and Bo Jackson. Biancalana bounces to short, and we move to the ninth, 11-5 Baltimore.
It's the Subaru Value Celebration, the greatest Subaru deals in Subaru history.
Stop! That's one Subaru commercial you won't see the rest of. What's really important isn't hoopla, but a great deal on a great car, like up to $1,500 cash back on a Subaru. With the money you can save now at your Subaru dealer, you can have your own celebration. Up to $1,500 factory cash back on a Subaru. Or now you can get Subaru's 3.9% financing. That's really cause for celebration.
Here's to the winners, those who move mountains. Here's to the miracles they make us see.
Holiday Inn salutes the people who go the distance and then some. To all the people who still believe in dreams and in themselves.
Here's to the winners, all of us can be.
Holiday Inn welcomes and reminds you, if you're a winner, we're on your way.
In 1973, a small bar served the first light beer. The response was unanimous.
Tastes great.
Here was a beer with its own special brewing process.
Less filling.
It's brewed to be light with only the finest quality ingredients.
Tastes great.
Less filling.
Today, there are lots of lights around, but none are brewed like Miller Lite, and none can match the taste.
Taste great! Taste great!
Hey, Doll, sounds like our kind of place.
There's only one light beer, Miller Lite.
Only you.
Just because you've washed your car doesn't mean you're finished. After each wash, you need some Armor All on the dash, the bumper, and especially the tires. Armor All, it's the finishing touch every time you wash your car.
You're my dream.
And now, introducing Clean Start, the new cleaner which safely removes tough dirt. Clean Start, only from Armor All products.
Bobby Rahal, the hottest driver on the IndyCar circuit of late, leads the top field, including Mario and Michael Andretti, auto racing's equivalent of the Ripken clan, along with Al Unser Jr. and Danny Sullivan. I guess Al's dad is not in this one, but the names we've mentioned are in the CART Toronto Indy, coverage beginning at 4 Eastern Time tomorrow on NBC.
27 hits in the ball game. Era of the alleged live baseball, we haven't seen a home run yet today.
Which is a great relief to Cal Ripken Sr., whose staff has allowed 130 home runs, the highest yield in the majors. They're on a pace now to give up 234 home runs for the season, which would shatter the mark for most home runs allowed by a pitching staff, which is 220, yielded by the Kansas City A's back in 1964. This is a foul ball, and Gerhardt will come back for another swing. Before this game, the Orioles had hit 126, second highest total in the majors behind Detroit's 127, but they'd yielded 130.
What are there, about 8 or 10 teams on a 200-plus home run pace? There was no 200 home run team last year. Orioles at 58 in the month of May, a major league record. Look at this ball fly.
Willie Wilson back and on the track for the catch. There are 10 teams right now in the major leagues on a 200 home run pace. No team hit 200 homers a year ago. For a while, the Minnesota Twins were on target to eclipse the 1961 Yankees record of 240. Early July last year, the Twins were actually ahead of that pace. They cooled off a little bit in the second half.
See, the record for home runs at the ballpark was hit old Wrigley Field in '61. Around 250, as I recall. California Angels, in that expansion year of '61, played that little ballpark before they moved to Chavez Ravine, which became Dodger Stadium.
That little ballpark also known as Wrigley Field. Los Angeles is Wrigley Field, where they played Pacific Coast League games for years. The Angels moved in for a couple of seasons when the franchise was first granted Brought in some big sluggers like Steve Bilko and Ted Kluszewski, Leon Wagner. You must have loved to hit there when you and the Yanks came into town.
Wasn't any fun facing Dean Chance and Bo Belinsky. They had some pretty hard throwers.
Here's a 3-1 pitch. And Wiggins draws a walk. He's been aboard his last 3 times with a couple of walks and a hit.
The second baseman, Bill Ripken.
Billy Ripken now.
I thought our conversation on the bench, it was the first time I had met Billy, but I know both of us over the last couple of years, we've asked Cal Sr. and Jr. Every time we go, what's the progress of Billy? Is he ready? And they tell how much he's hitting, whatever else. Interesting, the question you asked me, you remember your best boyhood altercation. Billy was fun. In fact, Cal Jr. didn't remember. Billy said, you remember back when I was 5 years old and Pops was managing at Rochester? And I threw a punch at you through a glass window and cut my arm up, and Cal Jr. said, I couldn't remember that. He said, but I think that was our best fight as kids.
Obviously, Billy has to adopt a different strategy when it comes to fisticuffs. You're trying to take a swipe at a guy who's on the other side of the window.
Yeah.
Farr's ahead of him 0-2. And moves him off a little bit.
You know, Cal Sr. talks about the boys, Billy and Cal Jr. He said, I really didn't teach them much about baseball. He said, you know, I was traveling all the time, either coaching, managing. He said, my wife took care of the kids. He said, what they learned, I don't know if it's osmosis, but I think he's a little bit modest in that. I think he taught them enough baseball. In fact, he said, I heard Billy the other day when Cal Jr. hit a double in this ballpark on Thursday, use an expression that I used to use in the minor leagues. Semi-pro ball, rather, when there were no fences.
Throws his bat at the ball, and he's got himself his 3rd base hit.
In fact, the expression that Billy used, base that just sneaks through the left side, was Cal hit a ball to the outfield, and Billy was on the bench yelling, run all day. And Cal Sr. said, the players on the bench looked at him and said, where did you get that expression? Billy Jr. said, I got it from my dad when I was a kid when he played semi-pro ball where there were no fences. He said, my dad was playing left field and there was a cornfield. The guy hit a ball over his fence. He said, my dad hit a ball in his pocket. He went into the first row of the cornfield, pulled it out, and threw the guy out of 3rd base because he got tired of chasing the ball. And my dad said, I just got tired of running all day into those cornfields. So the kid did learn something growing up, Billy Jr. Or Billy, Cal Jr. said.
It's a challenge for announcers now at this Baltimore club. Distinguish one Ripken from another around the middle of the diamond. Distinguish senior from junior on the bench. Got to be careful with those references. That one just misses the inside part of the plate.
Billy, before the ball game yesterday, again today, was warming up with his big brother, Cal. And he said, I'm trying to get back at you. He was working on his knuckleball, trying to knuckle one off the shin of Cal Jr. They're having a good time together. All 3.
Yeah, we were talking before about the home run pace, both in terms of yielding them for the Orioles and the ball clubs that have a chance to hit 200 as a team. Down to 3rd, and Seitzer can't come up with it. Tried to short hop it. The bases will be loaded. Wiggins stopping at 3rd. He had an idea about scoring, but he holds.
It's always a tough play when you read the hop off artificial surface. It comes off the graininess of the turf here, which you just put in a couple of years ago, and then it hits the dirt. And you try and read the hop off the bat, but when it goes from turf to dirt, the hop is a little different, and he couldn't get that little shorter in-between hop. He did prevent a double by slapping it down, and at least 1 RBI. Royals had trouble with some plays in the close ball game yesterday.
Up steps Murray with a chance to pad his RBI total. He takes low. What I started to say is Bert Blyleven has now thrown 31 or 32 gopher balls already this year, and he set the record last season by having 50 hit against him. Fred Lynn hit 2 3-run homers off Blyleven about a week ago in a 13-12 Baltimore win against Minnesota. Blyleven remains a quality pitcher. This is rocked foul, but his outfielders are going to go to the fence a few times every time he goes to the mound.
Well, that's another one of my theories about why the ball is flying farther. You know, I mean, perhaps the center is a little bit better, and the yarn is wound tighter, and the glue is different. And I really think the balls are sewn tighter, and even though they appear the same amount of liveliness.
It's a double play ball. Biancalana shovels it to White and on to first, and the Orioles leave the bases loaded for the second consecutive inning. They probably don't need it. 11-5 as we go to the last half of the ninth.
When I played hoops, I could beat anybody. Still can. Yo, cheap little one-on-one or what?
Get out of town, man.
Chicken! At least I can enjoy a Miller Lite while I'm looking for a game, right? How about you, Peanut? Wimp. Light tastes great, but these beanpoles probably drink it because it's less filling. Hey, yo, beanpole, you want to show me what you got? Tricks are easy. I'd like to get this turkey on the court.
It's no contest. There's only one light beer, Miller Lite.
Buy yourself a little freedom. Get yourself a great little car. See how it feels to have your own set of wheels. Buy a little freedom, buy a Yugo. Go anywhere you want to, anytime you want. Just get up and go. See how it feels to have your own set of wheels. Buy a little freedom, buy a Yugo.
Yugo, America's most affordable new cars.
America is sending her best. The swift. The strong. The athlete. This summer, America is sending her best to Rome, and NBC will be there.
As the old-time announcers like to say, for those of you scoring at home, of course, we must be technically accurate. And so the Orioles do not leave the bases loaded, what with the double play, erasing a base runner. So technically speaking, they strand two. And despite scoring 11 runs, they've left plenty today. They left about a dozen aboard.
Well, perhaps they'll have a celebrity official scorers camp that you may go to and brush up on it during the offseason. You know, I was starting to say at the end, in relation, it was going to be Bert Blyleven, 50 home runs last year in the pace. I really think the seams are so much flatter that aerodynamically the ball is not moving as much. A lot more hanging breaking balls. Fastballs aren't moving as much. And Blyleven's curveball not as effective the last couple of years. He always gave up quite a few home runs, but not like last year, the pace this year. And I think aerodynamically also that the ball travels through the air farther if the seams are not raised like they once used to be. And that may account for weaker pitching and the more home runs, part of it.
Larry Owen whacks one foul as we go to the last half of the ninth. Bob Costas along with Werner von Braun.
I was just expounding on the Bernoulli theory of aerodynamics taught to me by Johnny Sain, one of the great pitching coaches of all time. And embellished by former great reliever Mike Marshall, who talked about the Bernoulli theory on airfoils and seams. Joe Niekro says his knuckleball's not knuckling as much this year, and he thinks it's because the seams are flattened. Well, hey, you've got to come up with something. I think that may be better than Joe's theory that Peter Ueberroth's name is on the ball at the All-Star game, although I thought it was a cute one. Thought about Joe Garagiola out in Oakland a couple days back.
Larry Owen, a strikeout victim, one away in the last half of the ninth.
The center fielder, Willie Wilson.
None of the Bobby Brown signature models have wound up on the other side of the fence today, despite 16 runs being scored. Willie Wilson had a single his last time up. He's 1 for 4. He has 27 stolen bases. He's 3 away from 500 for his career.
You know, if pitching is the weakest it's ever been, and some people say that, been around baseball a long time, why has A. Bartlett Giamatti delegated a 5-man committee to explore expansion? They just are going to start doing. Where are they going to get the pitchers from after all the other expansions? Perhaps they're exploring it because the Meadowlands in New Jersey is about ready to open up an area for a baseball field. They've approved a site, and they'd like to get the jump on the American League to get that spot. economics, it might make sense expansion, but does it as far as the talent pool is concerned? Seems to be at somewhat of a low ebb, especially in the pitching department. A lot of old-timers hanging on, a lot of kids being rushed, strikeouts going up.
2-1 the count. Back to Corbett. And the Orioles are 1 out away from their 3rd straight win in this series and their 4th in a row overall. The Major League Baseball Game of the Week has been brought to you by Miller Lite. For great taste, there's only one light beer. By Armor All, it's the finishing touch. Every time you wash your car. By the Prudential, offering a wide range of insurance and other financial services. And by your Toyota dealer and the reliable Camry sedan and wagon. Who can ask for anything more? Toyota. Lonnie Smith, runner-up to Dale Murphy in the MVP balloting in 1982. Pennant year for the Cardinals. He scored something like 120 runs that year, stole better than 60 bases. What an offensive catalyst he was for Whitey Herzog. Not the player he used to be, but still a very useful player.
George Orta, left-handed hitter, and Balboni were sharing the platooning spot earlier in the year as far as the DH for Billy Gardner. Now it's Eisenreich. Lonnie Smith. Thad Bosley, an outstanding pinch hitter, did a little bit of DH, and he is struggling with the bat. See where Jimmy Eisenreich's got a brother playing at the Appleton franchise A baseball in the Midwest League. Charlie Eisenreich, who's a prospect also. I believe he's a third baseman, but right-handed or left. I haven't seen him yet this year.
This ball's hit into center, and so the Royals stay alive. And for Lonnie Smith, his first hit of the 1987 season.
In the Major League.
You bet. Up comes Kevin Seitzer, who made a bid to be the all-star hero. With the game scoreless, last half of the 10th, I think it was, against Lee Smith, he sent Willie McGee to within a step of the wall in dead center field at Oakland. Willie made a catch on the long drive, and of course, eventually, the National Leaguers won it in 13.
I lost track watching that ball game on TV till the wee hours in Wisconsin, but it seems like Kevin Seitzer and Mark McGuire are about the only two American League hitters got the ball in the infield, as far as I can recall. Mark McGuire hitting that ball deep in the right field corner that Dale Murphy got.
Seitzer's 1 for 4 today. A ball and a strike to him. Assuming this holds up, Flanagan will be the winner, 1-5. His first victory since August 23rd of 1986. And another defeat for Danny Jackson, who will fall to 4-11. Down to their last strike, 1-2.
They have an unusual stance. He's always got to get that jersey up. San Diego beats Whitey Herzog's Cardinals. I'll tell you, Larry Boas had a few things go right just before the All-Star game.
That's the second time in the San Diego-St. Louis series that the Padres have beaten the Cards in 10 innings.
Look out.
In the air to left, and it's deep left, and it's gone. For Seitzer, it's number 6. The 131st yielded by the Baltimore staff, and the first for either team today.
A 1-ball, 2-strike count. A breaking ball that just lie there for him to jump all over. Inside part of the plate with Floyd Rayford setting outside, and he knew it immediately, didn't he? So we finally get an HR this year of the home run.
11-7.
And it's going to force from Brett up Cal Ripken Sr. to get his bullpen going. It's been quiet for a couple of innings, but it's only been a couple of innings.
A ball and a strike. Brett's 2 for 4.
He is a good-looking player, Seitzer, isn't he?
And this one's hit high in the air to right, but it may come up short. Back on the track is Lacey, and at the fence for the catch, and that'll do it. An interesting thing happened to Doug Corbett here. Had Kevin Seitzer not hit the home run, the official scorer was going to give Corbett a save. Not because the score was close when he came in, but because Corbett, in the judgment of the scorer, would have worked 3 effective innings, and that's one aspect of the save rule that you seldom see come into play. But when Seitzer hit the homer, even though Corbett finished the game and the Orioles won, the scorer had a different idea. He said Corbett was not effective enough, so there is no save in this game. And 7-11 is a bad and unlucky combination for the Royals today. We got to name an MVP.
How about Ray Knight?
You got it. He had 4 hits today. He had 4 RBIs. And Light Beer from Miller is happy to present a check for $1,000 in the name of Ray Knight to the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. So, for Tony Kubak, I'm Bob Costas. Thank you very much for joining us today on the telecast from Kansas City. Remember, tomorrow, there's same-day coverage of the Cart Molson Toronto Indy car race. Coverage begins at 4 o'clock Eastern Time on NBC. So long.